Keith, Kathy, you guys ready to go? All right. Well, good morning. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming to the TriMet board meeting here for January 22nd. Before we get into our normal business meeting, we have our public forum, where there's an opportunity for anybody to speak to the board about issues of their concern, about issues about TriMet, and occasionally we get some issues that aren't related to TriMet, and we will help you get to the right person to deal with your needs. We have this is set aside for 45 minutes, and it's first come, first served. People have signed in. I know the sign up is now over. I would point out we have 23 people who've indicated they wanted to speak this morning. So at 45 minutes, we're going to have to cut you down to about 2 minutes in terms of testimony. I don't know whether did you hear that? 2 minutes. I think we're going to have to go here. So you have a timer in front of you there. It goes from green to yellow to red. And if you, when it gets to red, I'll ask you to, if you aren't done, I'm going to ask you to wrap up fairly quickly. And if you're all here regarding one issue, please, a very effective way to communicate is say you agree with the person who just testified, or let us know your position rather than take the time, because I do want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to talk to the board this morning. So I'm going to start this, and I'm going to call you up two at a time, and ask you to introduce yourself and then get into your testimony. So the first one is Jerry Moore and Mary Pavito. You're Jerry, right?
Yes.
All right.
Yes. I'm Jerry. I'm a service worker and a shop steward at Ruby, and I'm here to add my comments on restoring the apprenticeship programs. I just want to add that it can't be overstated how unambiguously and effusively the promise of career potential was conveyed to people who were, in some cases, weighing more than one job prospect, that the managers described 6 disciplines in detail, that workers were asked straight out during their interview which one of these fields interests you. So I hope we're clear, as we hear from other people, that we're talking about folks making life decisions for their families in some cases based on something other than the truth. And I want to make it clear as well that I work with people every night, men and women of all ages, from a huge variety of background experience who do have the intelligence to learn these trades, a certain despicable claim to the contrary notwithstanding. And all this is pretty granular for a boardroom. So, I want to encourage the board to look at the largest contour around this issue. And I think that's this: attacking public employee unions, outsourcing union jobs, cutting pensions. These are things we can associate with a particular political trend. Wisconsin, Michigan, Florida. We're not like that here. In Portland, the sentiment of the majority is clear. Progressives voted in to lead the city, the county, metro. We have a blue trifecta in the State House. If how to protect the public interest is a matter of debate, how to reflect the public's intentions is not. Diversity, transit equity, social impact. The board's mindfulness of these things is something Portlanders will always support. But a lot of Portlanders also understand that to nourish social equity and inclusiveness at the root, you have to support empowerment and agency of workers as a class. And that means respecting the unions. No more cuts, no more attacks. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Mary Pivito. I'm the Executive Director of Neighbors for Clean Air. Thank you for the opportunity to address your new diesel policy implementation. Public transportation is a cornerstone of a just transition, and related policy must protect the well-being of all, whether worker or rider, and it must ensure equal access to service without degrading the environment that it operates in. Diesel exhaust presents a significant threat to public health. In Portland suffers from some of the highest levels of diesel pollution in the United States. Why does that matter? Because, among other things, diesel is deadly. According to US EPA data, the annual tally of diesel-related premature deaths in Oregon is estimated to be over 400 of our neighbors, family members, and friends. It's also related to many other non-cancer outcomes. Diesel engines also emit black carbon, a type of fine particulate matter that is a major contributor to global climate change. But this is not new information. In 2007, the state legislature directed the state agency to address diesel and reduce it. And it was the subsequent study conducted by Oregon Department of Environmental Quality called the Portland Air Toxic Solutions, released in 2009, which identified diesel particulates 20 to 30 times higher than the cancer level. Because of this readily available data across the country, many large urban transit agencies began cleaning up older diesel buses in the 90s and early 2000s. In the meantime, despite its green credentials, TriMet, Oregon's largest consumer of diesel fuel, has long operated one of the dirtiest bus transit city fleets on the West Coast, continuing to run the most polluting type of diesel motors and even declining to apply for federal dollars when available. The public has borne the cost of being TriMet's filters and maintenance program for too long. For every filter TriMet refused to install nearly 2 decades ago, countless children have missed school and spent hours hospitalized for asthma, exacerbations, and worse. So in consideration of this history, the policy that was adopted in summer 2018, much lauded, remains unconscionable for the agency's same policy to allow it to continue to make any new diesel engine additions to its fleet. They're long-lasting, and we can expect them to stay in the fleet for up to 2 decades. In that same period of time, the amortization and operation costs of transitioning to electric would, by TriMet's own calculations, pay for themselves. It's time for TriMet to embrace a no diesel policy effective immediately. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you. All right, the next two are Luke McClure and Sybil Hendrick Park. And I do have a handout, it looks like, from Ms. Park that I'll make sure the board has. Please.
Director Warner and board, thank you for the opportunity to speak before you this morning. My name is Luke McClure, engineer at local wind energy company, bike commuter, and a concerned citizen of Portland regarding TriMet's continued purchases of diesel buses. My generation understands the significance of the IPCC reports requiring immediate and unprecedented action. I see no insurmountable challenges for TriMet to buy all battery electric now. We likely need the $70,000 depot chargers and likely need to optimize between 60-foot and 40-foot buses. But I see overwhelming advantages for TriMet and the city of Portland, from lower costs of fleet costs overall to improved air quality, and it can't be understated the message this sends to the diesel industry and state legislators. November resolution 1909-78, which resulted in 31 new diesel buses approved, and looking to order another 128 coming soon, states that manufacturer of electric buses, BYD, was non-responsive for the battery electric bus type. However, further reading, BYD proposed that their long-range battery electric would meet TriMet specs. I'd like to hear what the missing items were that outweighed the decision on this resolution. For context, 400,000 electric buses are running worldwide. In China, Shenzhen was the first city to reach 100% in 2017. Beijing will be at 10,000 buses, thousands of them battery electric, by this year, starting with just 1,000 in 2018. Closer to home, LA DOT just ordered 130 from BYD battery electric buses. TriMet diesel plan seems to have the solutions necessary, but is not reflected in this resolution. According to the plan's analysis, BEB fleet is less expensive than diesel over time, and savings on maintenance costs is great, and seems like a poor time also to start cutting apprenticeship programs.
Luke, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up here.
Yep, just last statement here. please help us progress this transition faster and make Portland a leader, not a follower, in dirty diesel to clean electric. Thank you.
Thanks, Luke. Maybe I'll ask staff to follow up with you a little bit in terms of kind of the decision points and our experience and what we're doing with buses, because we're learning a lot and also have a lot of information which you may not have. So thank you for coming.
Absolutely understand. Thank you.
Hi, nice to see you again.
Nice to see you. I return today because after Ordinance 355 about the Southwest Kings Hill Salmon Stop, our business, the Providence Sports Care Center, took your decision and kind of modified our business plans for the future without that stop in its place. I realized that there's a temporary year closure that's set to start March 1st. My appeal and request of the board this morning is to consider the very small corridor that runs down Southwest 18th. There is 3 large construction projects. What prompted me now is that the Lincoln High School project just started, and we're already seeing sidewalk closures, street closures. I included some pictures that includes the Lee Crutcher Lewis press block that is not done and completed until June 17th of this year. And these pictures, while they don't look too threatening, if you have a cane or a walker or even a limp, the first picture, the difference between the curb and the fence is about 2 feet. If you are mobility impaired, that is a great safety risk. The picture looking into the Providence Park eastbound station, there is no sidewalk that allows for a scooter. It's hard sidewalks. It's very impairing for security and safety of our mobility impaired and elderly patients. The exit from the temporary and as well as the entrance, there's slopes, there's trip hazards. It's a safety concern. And I understand that closing the stop eventually is probably inevitable, and that's okay. However, for the safety of our patients and our public, I really am asking that you wait to close that stop until fall of 2022. I have 2 updates to the dates. The lot that was the TriMet lot on the corner of Southwest 18th will be completed July of 2021. And I did learn that even though Lincoln High School is set to be complete in 2023, the salmon side will be done in the fall of 2022. So my ask is please reconsider keeping that stop open until fall of 2022.
Thank you. Thanks for bringing this to our attention. This is when maybe staff is already on, but it'd be good to go out there and check and see what's going on, make sure we whatever's going on, the access is safe for folks. This is good information. Thanks for coming. All right, the next 2 I have are Deborah Olson and Tracy Farwell. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. I'm Deborah Olson. I have a few items. There's no bus. We have no bus on Burnside and Shattuck to get us around. Walmart is stopping their bus as of the 31st of January 2020. Joanne asked me, is TriMet going to pick up the bus service Walmart's stopping? I told her to call TriMet. So evidently the Walmart on Sandy is going to start closing at 10 p.m. The gentleman that was here before who talked about not getting Lyft rides and being late for work was late 3 weeks ago. He's not sure if he's going to have a job anymore. After the last month's public sharing, it was time to I talked about giving school kids free passes. Well, it turns out, sounds like the college kids need free passes to get to classes too, and you might as well include the people who are in trade schools. When the MAX is late for any reason at all, those of us who live around the Civic Stop, we end up waiting 15 to 30 minutes or longer. It's the only transportation we have since there's no bus on Max and Shattuck Way. And it's a 15-minute trek. And again, many of my neighbors can't get there. And Dougie, this is for you. When the Lyft sends a Broadway cab and leaves me stranded, as they did in October 2019 at the TriMet board meeting in Beaverton, I cannot just jump on the MAX and meet them somewhere halfway between here and Gresham. You have to make the arrangements the day before, by 5 o'clock. So I called them and told them I was going back to the TriMet board meeting to complain, and they said, oh my gosh, we see he didn't wait. Well, he called my landline instead of coming into the building to get me, and he was sitting in the other parking lot He did not go to where we were dropped off. And that $11 million detention center you built, I hope you put a lot of showers and maybe a few washer and dryers in there so the homeless could come in and maybe shower and get cleaned once in a while. I'd like to see reduced fares, please. It's spelled F-R-E-E. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. I'll remember to pronounce your name correctly the next time. All right. Tracy? Excuse me. Yes, Tracy, right?
Correct.
Thank you.
Director, President Warner, remaining directors of the board. We live in difficult times. If we don't come to terms with the difficulties, it only gets worse. I am Tracy Farwell, a member of Engineers for a Sustainable Future, and times are really bad for me because, like all engineers, I understand what the UN IPCC is talking about. After reviewing all the data generated by TriMet concerning the board-approved diesel bus buy, I'm concerned that it's going to get worse for the board and for the TriMet authorities because collectively you're not coming to terms. A necessary transition to zero-emission TriMet fleet is falling behind the UN IPCC goals needed for our survival. The SAFE goal is depicted in the graphic I've prepared with data from the TriMet public data. TriMet fleet transition plan is wholly inadequate because diesel emissions are not significantly curtailed for nearly 10 years. If anyone finds this graphic to be erroneous, TriMet can report the real one. According to President Warner's tenure, the board will be electing a new board president in February. 2 directors are coming to terms with public health threats and climate pollution. The remaining are not. It's crucial that you select your leadership from the 2 directors who voted against the diesel bus buy. There's no time to waste with the public like us explaining over and over the crisis you can't see. If some other director is selected, that will only get worse. In particular, it's hard to understand why a fast-charge 40-foot electric bus with a 150-mile range cannot serve the 12-mile Division Street corridor, but it doesn't seem to qualify against the criteria TriMet is not disclosed. We need board leadership that can ask and reconcile the answer with good numbers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we have Anthony Forrester and Chris Tyson. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's been a while since we've seen you. Welcome back.
Thank you very much. So good morning, President Warner, members of the board. My name is Anthony Forster, and it has been a while since I've been back, since I've had a chance to talk with you. I'm the Light Rail Transportation Executive Board Officer, just for those who don't know me. I've been at TriMet for 21 years, and I've served our union for over half of my career trying to make TriMet, as well as the working spaces of the people that I work with, better. The elimination of the apprentice program is what I'm here to talk about, and the elimination of the program puts this in jeopardy. And there are more ways than I can talk about in this 3-minute talk or 2-minute talk, whatever it's going to be, than I can give to actually tell you how much the elimination of this matters. If you don't think the apprentice program matters, ask any union member here, or even my fellow union member, Mr. Edwards, can attest to how much apprentice programs matter to a union, especially where there's members of the trade involved in the union. For me, it affects my safety. When you contract work out because there's not the workers on the floor to handle it, the work becomes less safe, the equipment becomes less reliable. Our managers make sure that the job is done right. The managers of the people that you take this work to are actually there to make sure that there's a profit done with the work. Between people and profit, I'll choose people every single time. I'll also choose getting it right every single time, because too often when I talk to mechanics, the work that's contracted out actually has to be redone or fixed when it comes back to TriMet, because the people that the work was contracted out to have cut too many corners on it to actually be safe and effective on the equipment that it's going to be on, because we transport the public. We transport the most sacred, commodity of our city, the people of our city, right? We need to keep quality mechanics in-house, and the only way to make sure that we have the quality mechanics that we need in-house is to train them ourselves. Without training these mechanics ourselves, we don't actually, you put the future of our agency in the hands of someone else that doesn't care about the agency. If I had more time, I could come up with example after example, from Columbia Helicopter to literally Scuderia Ferrari, who know that and have found out that you have to train people in-house to get the quality mechanics that you need. If you don't get the quality mechanics that you need, because they just don't come to your agency. I will choose people over profit every single time. And I'll continue to stand up with my brothers and sisters to make sure that our equipment is as safe as possible. I also want you to support Transit Equity Day on February 4th. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Chris.
Good morning. My name is Chris Tyson. I'm a current service worker. I work out of Powell Garage, and I had some ambitions to become a mechanic. But that's what I'm here to talk about. Service workers like me maintain the TriMet system that, in turn, provides broad spectrum benefits to our community. The idea of you eliminating the apprenticeship program is one that to say that it puts our future in jeopardy is understating it. It actually removes our future. We don't have a future. We've reached the top. There's nowhere else for us to go. What that means then is that, like I described, service working basically looks like a dead end. And everyone on the board here knows that service working is far from a dead end. In fact, it is the base to which the system is propped up upon. If the apprenticeship program is eliminated again, it's going to jeopardize our citizens' livelihoods. That they rely on our precision, our dedication to our district. With the concept that we're going to extend the light rail service to Tualatin, or this idea of a new bus garage in the north part of the city, how are we to serve to our utmost if we don't have a mechanism with which to develop ourselves as workers? One thing that I learned when I first got onto TriMet was that as a company, as a district, the success that we're celebrating with our 50th anniversary was one that was built upon the benefits that come from our apprenticeship program. One that has been successful and has been in place for 40 of those 50 years up till recently. I just got off of a bus servicing shift just this morning as I was thinking about what I was going to say to you guys when I came in today. When a bus was coming in and I was getting ready to fuel it, I saw one of our many bus racks with the placard on it, and it has the old saying we like saying, see where it takes you with the TriMet logo. Ironically, as a service worker without the apprenticeship program, I can't see where I'm going.
All right. Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you.
I have Kevin, and I'm going to mess up your last name. Knuslitz? Kaneshita. Okay, thank you. And Mary Longoria.
President Warner, members of the board, my name is Mary Longoria, and I am here to tell you about a completely refurbished bus purchased by Lane Transit District in 2019. The bus was purchased from Complete Coachworks for $275,000. I want to tell you this story because this board on September 18th approved Resolution 19-09-77 authorizing a Complete Coachworks contract for the purchase of transit bus refurbishment services in the amount of $6.1 million. After the bus was delivered, there were several safety and mechanical issues. The front wheel hubs and rear wheel hubs had different fastening systems that don't allow the wheels to be interchanged. This caused a major safety issue. The steering wheel wouldn't turn enough to the right in order to make right-hand turns effectively. Kind of a problem. Complete Coach Works sent a technician to Lane Transit District to fix this. The tech came with no tools and didn't know how to fix the issue. In the end, they sent the bus to a local vendor for repair. The left front wheel hub was also found to be leaking. The oil ended up soaking the brake lining, causing a safety issue. I could go on and on. The bus is in service but continues to have mechanical issues. Some of the drivers don't even want to drive it. Again, the board approved Resolution 19-09-77, authorizing a complete CoachWorks contract for the purchase of refurbished buses at a cost to Oregon taxpayers of $6.1 million. Roland Hoskins sat here and laughed and said, there are no guarantees with this contract. This is a hefty price for Oregon's hard-working taxpayers when there are no guarantees. Contracting work out often results in a lower quality product at a higher price. Not to mention, the money you're using to contract this work out is going to out-of-state companies. The contract with Complete Works, CoachWorks makes it crystal clear on why TriMet's proposal to eliminate the apprenticeship program and state oversight. Profits over people doesn't work for this community, the safety of our workers or our riders. This anti-union, anti-Oregon worker attitude needs to come off the table. And I would like to ask a question. Bruce Warner, President Warner, you did an article back in 2013, I believe, with Pamplin Media Group, and you said that the board stood behind you for the takeaways of our benefits through the contract, and I would like to know who on the board stands behind this proposal to eliminate the apprenticeship program. Is it a full board that approves and wants this to happen?
So I think what we need to do is tell you that this is on the negotiating table. I understand that we're talking about the negotiations. We're not going to negotiate here in the public, and so I think we'll let you and the management wrestle this issue and hopefully can come to an acceptable resolution for both, because we do want to see our workers have the best possible training, and we want to be able to get mechanics on board as quickly as possible. So maybe again, this is again a future opportunity as we get into where you are with the labor negotiations to have you give us through in an executive session where we are in terms of the process and what other things need to be considered as we move forward, okay?
But in the article, you did say that
Mary, I'm gonna have
in
to
the
say,
article said
Mary,
CEO of TriMet is operating with full understanding and support of the board. I'm just curious if that is the current situation.
I have no idea what article you're referring
Thank you.
to, so.
Yep, I have it.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, you can get, that'd be great, but on to you.
Sorry.
Good morning. My name is Kevin Kinoshita. I've been with TriMet going on 26 years now. I have two questions. What's the plan for the next 5 to 10 years for maintenance? And also, when will we start making a bigger transition from bus to electric as mechanics? As you've heard from many people up here, they want electric buses. But how do we get from diesel mechanics moving forward to become electrical mechanics?
Good question.
And that's a huge question that has been on my mind ever since TriMet says we're getting electric buses. You know, we can still keep the apprenticeship program, but maybe not call it the diesel apprenticeship program. We can keep moving forward, both sides. We've been through the tough times. We've come up with solutions to benefit both sides. And I'm here today to ask, let's sit down, take off our jackets, and come up with solutions. There's many solutions to help this agency move forward with the union. And that's what I'm asking today. Also, when I got here, the first thing I've learned from TriMet from the private sector is let's do things safe, let's get trained the proper way, and let's work together. That's a huge thing for incoming workers coming to TriMet. We've always stressed, let's work safely, let's get the job done correctly so we don't have to keep going back and forth. As an apprentice, you go through many, many stages. And as a committee member for the apprenticeship program, it's great to see men and women move forward and become very productive members as journeyman mechanics. And I think that thing right now is huge. 30 seconds?
Sure.
As the mobility for helpers and service workers to move up, they can become assistant supervisors, trainers, managers, supervisors, even director of maintenance. And as the apprenticeship program, as you have heard, wants to get eliminated, the chances of mobility for these individuals to move up has just been cut completely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your comments. Next two are David Kay and Shirley Block. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Please.
Good morning, all. My name is David Kay. I am a TriMet retiree. I left the district with 34 years under my belt from the maintenance section. I'm currently the vice president of the retirees chapter for our local. I'm one of the many people over the years that have directly benefited from the apprenticeship program. I trained in the early 80s. I was in the second class that ever came out of that program as a state certified heavy bus mechanic. This is, like I say, approximately 1986. The district was in growing pains at that time, which it is now, obviously. But following the advent of this training program, we ended up as the national model for what you wanted a training program to be in the transit industry. We took that recognition with work and heart and planning to take TriMet to the #1 transit agency in this nation. We had people coming from all over the world to see what we were doing. We were the model of success, if you will. Sadly, this is no longer accurate. The apprenticeship program that produced the people that pulled this off has been neglected, and now it is being used as a bargaining chip in contract negotiations. The district has chosen to move to a hire off the street policy. The results have been dismal. I spent 20 odd years as an OJT coach and part of the Joint Apprenticeship Training Committee, and I watched these people come off the street and struggle. There is such a huge difference between a modern transit bus and an over-the-road truck or even a military vehicle that these people need at minimum a year, most likely 2, to reach a competency level that we would expect. This raises to me a question. And it comes down to if you're going to need somebody to work on your vehicle, are you going to call the Maytag man to work on your bus? This is ridiculous because that's what's going on in this fashion. Our apprenticeship program took these folks and turned them into highly trained professional technicians working on the exact equipment that they would be working on. They learned to our spec and were ready to go, even better than these off-the-street folks when they journeyed out onto the floor. I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up. I will do so. Right. I respectfully request that instead of eliminating the apprenticeship program, it be updated to reflect our current status and moves to the future. Thank you. Good comment. Thank you. President Block, nice to see you.
You think so?
Still nice to see you.
Good morning, Board, President Warner, Shelley, Doug. I'm here, just like the rest of these folks. The majority of these service workers that are in this room today work nights. They came straight from their jobs down here to ask you to not leave them standing behind a broken promise, because that's exactly what it is. These folks, some of them came from out of state. They're here to do a job and do a job well. Unfortunately, you're using this, you said, President Warner, that you don't want to negotiate to the public. It'll be negotiated to the public one way or the other, because I am not going to have these folks without this broken promise you had. I talked to you last month, and I will continue to talk with you. I don't want to negotiate to the public, but I will take it there if need be, because Kimberly Sewell, who is the top person that should be negotiating, had let Leard Cusack do the negotiation, and he wants to turn us into Seattle. We are not Seattle. We are Portland. Electric buses are coming, or gas buses. The mechanics want to be trained. They beg to be trained. It wasn't ATU who kept people out of the training program. It was TriMet. You guys have control of who you put in there. For the last year, nobody has gone into an apprenticeship program. Again, we have asked over and over to put these people in the program. You refuse to do so. So don't try to blame it on us or put it in the public eye that it's our fault or our people are lazy. Your guys are at the helm. Your guys should be making the decision. If you need help, hell, I'm on 18th and Cooch. Anybody can come over there and talk to me. Call me on the phone. Send me an email. I don't care. But, Doug, you know I'm at the top of this just like you are, and I am not going to go out and let these people be neglected. Just like A and B board. Nobody wants that. I asked Leard Cusack, let's do a survey together. He did not want to do a survey at all, and now he wants to know what our survey looks like. Well, I'll tell him, if people do not want an A and B board, they can take it off the table. And at the end of my thing, because you got your little red light on, ATU endorses transit equity.
Thank you, Shirley. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I have Kenneth David Marsh and Zoe Presson. Are you Kenneth?
Yeah, Daniel March. March like the month.
Oh, Daniel. Okay, thank you. Daniel, not David. Thank you. And is Zoe here? Okay. Oh, okay. Oh, there you are. Good. Go ahead, Daniel. You can start if you'd like.
Morning, everybody. I'm here with XRPDX, and the last time we testified to council on reversing your decision to purchase diesel buses that will have 12 to 20-year lifespans, adding greenhouse gases and other harmful emissions. It was explained by the staff that there are backlogs on ordering electric buses. We have found this to be disingenuous, as we've talked to BYD, the largest bus producer in the world with facilities in California and other U.S. locations, and they are filling electric bus orders for other cities in times comparable or faster than diesel producers, due to rapidly expanding plants here. Through their battery lease program, they could provide electric buses at upfront prices comparable to diesel, which have much higher lifetime fuel and maintenance costs. There are multiple studies showing the cost savings advantage, which can be $500,000 per savings vehicle. You know what I meant. There's a federal subsidy available through the Trump administration, put forward a clause that could affect foreign-owned contracts 2 years from now, but that is likely to be overturned, or in BYD's case, less of an issue because they are here in the U.S. Even so, there's no reason not to contract with them. And the regional sales director said he's had a problem even getting a hold of you guys and trying to do vehicle demonstrations. Zero-emission buses can save 1,690 tons of CO2, 10 tons of nitrogen oxides, and 350 pounds of particulates over 12 years, which could be as much as doubled depending on bus lifetime. Extinction Rebellion, of which I am a member, has 4 demands. The first is to tell the truth, and that governmental bodies must recognize and declare that we are in a climate emergency, and on a scale necessitating a war-type mobilization. The second demand is that we need to rapidly decarbonize with developed countries, reaching net zero by 2025. I challenge you as a TriMet council and staff to explain to the public why you're not taking appropriate steps given the severity of the time crunch. And I just want to get the fourth demand in here is that it's a just and equitable transition,
Thank you.
pertaining to our most vulnerable populations and communities.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
I am Zoe Presson. I'm a member of the Committee on Accessible Transportation, but I'm not here as a member of the Committee on Accessible Transportation. I am here as a bus rider of bus number 16, and there are 2 stops along Nadeau Parkway around where I live. In the 700 block of Nadeau Parkway, there are there's no places for the bus to pull in. So if I want to catch the bus, either she has to go down to nearly the driveway, Ironside Terrace, or she has to hope that nobody's parked along the bus zone. My husband has had problems catching the bus at the other stop at the 900 block, where he has nearly missed that bus to get to a job. I'm frustrated, people. I'm not saying you can do something about this. I know I've got to go to city council. I don't know how to do that. I'm stupid. Thank you.
I know that's not the case, but maybe we can get somebody to talk to you and see if we can help. Thanks. Thanks for both coming. I will let you know that if my math is correct, I have another 12 people who want to testify, and we've already been at it about 40 minutes right now. So I'm going to have to ask folks to be even a little more quick in their testimony so we can hear from everybody, or we're going to have to shut it off here in another 15 minutes or so. All right? So Diane Meisenhofer and Scott McWilliamson. You guys want to keep going, get through all this?
Diane, he took Diane's.
Oh, okay. Diane's gone. How about Lynn Handlin?
I'll be brief. My name is Scott McWilliams. I'm from Oregon City. I came in on the orange line this morning. It was great. I've given the board a copy of this article from November, World Scientists Warning of a Climate Emergency. I'll just read the opening paragraph and the conclusion to be brief. Scientists have a moral obligation to clearly warn humanity of any catastrophic threat and to tell it like it is. On the basis of this obligation and the graphical indicators presented below, we declare, with more than 11,000 scientists signatories from around the world, clearly and unequivocally that the planet Earth is facing a climate emergency. And from the conclusion, mitigating and adapting to climate change while honoring the diversity of humans entails major transformations in the way our global society functions and interacts with natural ecosystems. We are encouraged by a recent surge of concern. Governmental bodies are making climate emergency declarations. School children are striking. Ecocide lawsuits are proceeding in the courts. Grassroots citizen movements are demanding change, and many countries, states, and provinces, cities, and businesses are responding. I would urge the TriMet board to reconsider purchasing any more diesel buses and to purchase only electric buses in the future. We really are at our end of our time. Thank you.
Thank you. We're worried also, please.
Hi, my name is Lynn Spitaleri-Handlin, and I'm a member of Extinction Rebellion PDX, and I just want to say we should all be rebelling against the mass extinction that's going on due to the climate crisis. We know it's a crisis because the scientists have told us, and we can feel it all around us. Our house is on fire, and diesel pollution is pouring fuel onto that fire. Now is the time to stop this. I ride TriMet. I love TriMet. I ride the trains and the buses. Took the green line in today. Public transportation is important for those who ride it and for those who don't. TriMet must and can be a solution to the crisis we are facing. Diesel bus purchases is not part of that solution. Sorry. Diesel buses are the past. Now is the time to buy electric, as has been promised. TriMet should be leaders in electrifying our transportation system instead of lagging behind, which we are. Diesel buses dirty the air in the neighborhoods they serve, causing cancer, asthma, and a host of other health problems. I have a son with asthma, and he's around those buses, and it just makes his life pretty miserable. And electric buses over time will be cheaper in terms of dollars, but also clearly in terms of the health of the neighborhoods, the people around, and the planet. Do you all want to be living in a world that's burning up? And do you all want diesel fumes in your backyards, your front yards, in the playgrounds around where you live, where your children go to school? I don't know if any of you live in those areas where the diesel buses go through a lot, but I work in those areas, and it's not fun to see the kids, struggling to breathe because of the stinky buses that are driving by. Now is the time to be buying all electric and not waiting decades. And the buses that you're buying now, the buses that you were going to be buying that you're not, would be on the road for decades. So the problems that they cause will be here for decades to come.
Thank you. I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up.
Okay, it's also time for a fairless TriMet system. It can and should be done. Public transportation should be for all of us. More TriMet ridership means less cars on the road, cleaner air, and a chance at combating the climate crisis.
Thank you.
Thanks.
John Hunt and Shawnee Harris Bagwell. Remember, 2 minutes, Jonathan.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Members of the board, staff, Jonathan Hunt, Vice President, Assistant Business Agent of ATU Local 757. I'm also a graduate from the Heavy Duty Diesel Apprenticeship Program that we currently enjoy at TriMet. We've heard from a lot of folks today on the issues of why we should not eliminate our apprenticeship program. And I champion that same message. I think we need to look at alternatives. We have some of the best maintenance executive board officers willing to roll their sleeves up and talk about real issues and how to solve them. Eliminating programs is not the answer. The answer is working together. The answer is looking at other opportunities. Rather, that's bringing people in from the outside, which, my former position was in the Marine Corps in maintenance. And while that did give me a leg up when I went into an apprenticeship program, the reality is, as it's been pointed out today, this kind of work is very unique and it's specific. So while we welcome folks to come in from the outside, there still needs to be an opportunity for those folks to make sure that they're trained on the equipment that's here. It doesn't need to be a full program. It needs to be a program that makes sure that we're safe. You've heard that today. And it's a partnership that needs to continue to transcend through all of those issues that we have here. And that is how can we do it and move forward? Previously, we did away with a position as a helper and created a service worker. And the message that was in negotiations in the early 2000s was this was entry level, and you'll have great opportunities to move forward, and it's been expressed today. And those opportunities are not there. We have folks that are currently sitting here that were offered, that came here hoping to have a better life and are waiting as they see people come in from the outside, quite frankly, against the collective bargaining agreement. So I encourage you to, instead of fighting us right now, instead of at the table talking about the issue, we'd rather go to court to see if we should talk about it at all. Well, that doesn't work for us. And so I ask you to encourage the negotiating team to sit down with us and talk about those issues, whether it be kids from high school that are coming in to truly be a helper and learn what a wrench is and a screwdriver and then work their way up. But eliminating our apprenticeship program is not the answer. Putting energy into it is. And it's been stated here before that this was the #1 Transportation Learning Center, and groups throughout the United States would come here to look at that. And I'm proud of that, and I want to continue that. So my message is I'm here to work collectively. But what we're not going to do is we're not going to give up, and we're not going to go away. And I would encourage the board members to talk about maybe a different venue than what we currently have in communication, because I find it really unfortunate that over 3,500 members are limited to a 2 or 3 minute voice in this forum without having really good conversations. We need a better way of communicating what's going on and how can we fix it. We are your partners. Please keep us in the loop. Thank you,
Jonathan.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Yes.
Good morning. My name is Shawnee Harris Bagwell, and I am here on behalf of the Portland African American Leadership Forum. We help Black community imagine the alternatives we deserve and build our civic participation and leadership to achieve those alternatives. Our members and community have laid out a vision of a thriving, empowered Black community and asserts the rights of Black people to be in and shape community, whatever neighborhoods we live in, from the north to the numbers as part of the People's Plan. Through our plan, we have grounded ourselves as a collective of Black individuals, citizens, and organizations in answering the core key question, what do Portland's Black communities want, and what do we propose to move forward? We want to honor the legacy of Rosa Parks and those who worked with her, like Claudette Colvin, who at the age of 15 also refused to give up her seat for justice and access for all of us to have basic human rights. We are here in coalition today because we believe that transit equity is long overdue. We recognize that in order to achieve enduring positive change in our communities, we need a truly transformative agenda, one that is exciting and fresh, one that challenges the status quo and keeps pushing for real change. I'm here today with the Transit Equity Day Coalition to urge you all to take one teensy step toward that change. Join us now in supporting honoring Rosa Parks with more than just kind words of remembrance and provide free transit on all TriMet lines on her birthday, February 4th. We call upon you all to honor her legacy and support our People's Plan by making sure this resolution is bold and turns a day of remembrance into a day of service to community, acknowledging this incredible woman's successes and amending the resolution to honor what our coalition had intentionally asked from the very beginning, a day of free transit in honor of the mother of the freedom movement.
Thank you.
I also have a copy of the resolution for the board.
Next two is E.D.A. Mundane and Tristan Isaac. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. President. This is an honor to be here with you today. I'm E.D. Mondane, and I am the Regional Vice President for the NAACP and also the sitting president of the local Chapter 1120. You've been introduced to Claudette Colvin, and you know who Rosa Parks is. Claudette, a 15-year-old girl, and Rosa, a 42-year-old woman. And I want to introduce you also to Olivette Mondane, my mother, who years later, 10 years later, after this great movement, sitting in the front of the bus on her way to work, was told that on a crowded bus, a woman about her same age made very unapologetically a statement that said, "I remember the good old days when you folks had to sit in the back of the bus." I'm in partnership with the resolution that is to be honored for Rosa Parks on her birthday, and I also asked that we would turn those boxes off on that day. It just wouldn't be a small step. It would be a big step, a giant step towards real equity. We talk about equity, but what is equity if it's not put in the hands of the right people? I'm asking that you deliver equal equity and real equity to the people of Portland, and especially where it concerns the African American community. This giant step forward would show good faith in our community, as you have done before. You've done an amazing job at making some interesting turnarounds that have made this system better for our people. But we want you to go one step further and turn the boxes off on February 4th. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, TriMet Board. My name is Tristan. I am a member of the Bus Riders Unite Steering Committee. To begin, I would like to say that Bus Riders Unite stands in solidarity with the workers of Amalgamated Transit Union 757 as they fight to save apprenticeship programs that have supported good jobs in our communities for 40 years. To the leadership of TriMet, I say support your workers and respect the contract. Apprenticeships are not a bargaining chip. On December 1st, 1955, Rosa Parks boarded a bus in Montgomery, Alabama. When a white man embarked sometime after her, she was ordered to vacate her row in order for the man to take her seat. She refused, not as an isolated act of defiance, but as a part of a coordinated campaign by groups including the Montgomery NAACP to protest the racist segregation of their state. Today, we remember Rosa Parks as the mother of the freedom movement. During a period in U.S. history where most mass transportation was privatized and closed and monopolized for profit, she held her ground against the capitalist notion that freedom of movement was a commodity to be bought and sold, rather than a fundamental human right. As the agitations of Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King Jr. laid bare the injustice of segregation, so too did they expose the inequities of exploiting the fundamental human right to movement. Their actions shifted the paradigm of transit from merely a product to be bought and sold to a public good, held in common for the use and benefit of all. Contrary to the spread of private automobiles and freeways, which only serve to disrupt and destroy black communities, the rise of public transportation largely enriched every community it served. Though born of lofty ideals, this reclamation of the commons remained mired in the inequities of capitalism, which Dr. King often derided. To this day, one barrier remains to be surmounted. The very word public implies that, like a park or sidewalk, our transit system ought to be accessible to all. For many in our communities, though, this is simply not the case. Between rent, groceries, medical care, and other costs of living, even a seemingly affordable $2.50 is too much of a burden for working families. Very recently, we worked with TriMet to implement a low-income fare, which was a sorely needed respite. Prior to that, you granted our request to extend transfer time on single-use fares, providing great benefit to your riders. You listened to us in the past. We ask you to listen again now. Accessible and truly public transit is possible. We won't get there today or even this year, but we can and we must. Before you today is a resolution to honor Rosa Parks on February 4th, her birthday. To truly honor the First Lady of Civil Rights, you must honor everything she stood for. If you're here right now, she would tell you that no one should have to give up their seat for the color of their skin nor the weight of their purse. We ask only this: do not allow this resolution to pass without a commitment to free transit for all of your riders on Transit Equity Day, Rosa Parks' birthday. To do anything less would be to betray the legacy of a hero of the civil rights movement. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Mike McCurnery, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and Vanessa Nichols. No. Probably about 6 more. We'll take a break.
Warner and our TriMet president and board, and my ATU family, and the greater metropolitan representatives here. I want to proudly say I am a bus operator, and I took Max in to this meeting this morning, and I use Max for work every day. In an effort to try and keep things short, I'm kind of condense some things. I want to say this: there's a precedent in our community to help keep our community, our city livable and viable. It's called See Something, Say Something. The person speaking up may just be the voice that thwarts a potentially bad outcome for someone or something. On the other hand, it may also serve to be a support, like the time I saw a middle-aged man who tripped and fell in the dark on a Portland street. He was into his phone and he fell, he gashed his head. He needed help. Blood was running everywhere. I spoke out. I called our dispatch. They said, yes, pull aside and help him. So we were able to get him the help that he needed. No one knows this except for that man and the EMT workers who came to help him that night, and myself. There are many instances like that. See something, say something. I even saw a TriMet pole, light pole, where someone gashed the concrete around the side of it. It was ready to topple over. It was very unsafe. I called our dispatch. I called the property authorities. I saw something, said something. To this day, that pole is now replaced. Our voices are strong, and they need to be out there. So today is no different. I'm here to speak out for the continuance of our maintenance and apprenticeship programs because it's a good thing. It's a viable thing for our city, for our people, our families in this community. Let me cut this a little short here to say this. In the morning, when I came in from a morning run, I had a question for one of our maintenance workers. She said, follow me. I followed her. I followed her around until she got the answer that I needed, and I just graciously thanked her. She said, we do this for you all. You know, we learn, and we do this for you all to keep a safe riding bus for you in the community. So I want to say thank you, and we support Transit Day, support the Transit Equity Day on February 2nd.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all right. My name is Michael McCurry. I've been a bus driver for 12 years almost here at Merlo, but at Merlo, and now I'm an ATU representative for Merlo, the West Side, which I believe is your district, Mr. President, most of Washington County. And I stand with all of us for the not elimination of apprenticeship programs. And I do point out that with the folks that have said the same thing in regards to equity, it's those same people that use the apprenticeship program because they can't afford to get education elsewhere. Someone said that TriMet is not a community college. Well, a community college is a government agency to provide education. We kind of blend over to that because it's a trade. And this is extremely important to communities. And speaking of communities, TriMet has on multiple occasions deceived the public by saying we're not recording audio, which we are now, for the safety of everyone involved. And we also have a chief negotiator that believes public employees shouldn't have retirement. He said this in front of many witnesses. That's weird and kind of a contradiction for a government worker. So I asked this board, pretty simply, strip that person, who is Laird Cusack, of his retirement, because apparently he doesn't need it. Anyway, that is all.
Thank you very much. All right. Board, we have about 6 more. We doing okay?
Yeah.
All right. Let's go on then. Darren Harold Golden and R.A. Fonts.
Okay. Mr. President, board members, R.A. Fonts, good morning.
And we do have your information here. I'll pass out to everybody, okay?
Okay, great. That's background. I think it's important. It fundamentally affects TriMet's future, but they rarely get discussed. Rail fails. Without exception, after 33 years, every local rail project fails to provide cost-effective transportation. There have always been options which could provide better service at lower cost. WES is irrefutable evidence that TriMet is out of control. It never penciled out, could only be cost effective if riders were climbing all over each other and paying premium fares. TriMet should never have built WES, or at least should have shut it down years ago. And that FTA 20-year operating requirement, well, your own legal staff can't find it. It makes no difference how many times a TriMet staffer has told you or media outlets about it. It does not exist. Just ask legal. 5 more years with a P&W, really? Just say no. serve more riders, gain cred, just say no. The Portland streetcar is a problem for TriMet riders and taxpayers only because TriMet has made it so. Streetcar costs 40 to 45% more to run than a similar capacity 60-foot bus. Since streetcar costs so much to run and Portland refuses to ask riders to pay anything like their fair share, TriMet ends up denying riders transportation by carrying so much of streetcars' burdens. Max should be cost effective. One operator can move a lot of riders. Since Max costs about 3 times as much to run as a 60-foot bus, it needs to carry at least 3 times as many riders on average through the maximum load sections as TriMet would plan to carry in a 60-foot bus to be cost effective. That's just 45% of capacity. Max is running at less than half of that and less than 14% overall. We're overspending on Max for ops alone about $60 million a year. Overspending on rail ops totally wastes more than enough money to provide over 500,000 bus hours in revenue service each year. This is 500,000 hours of service for which we are paying but not getting because the money is being diverted to prop up underperforming rail. I just want to say that you need to rescind the Southwest Corridor recommendation. It is going to kill TriMet, guaranteed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello and good morning, TriMet board members. President Warner. Thank you for opening up your space to allow for the ever-important voice of the people. I'm here on behalf of the Urban League of Portland. Our mission is to empower African Americans and other Oregonians to achieve equality in education, employment, and economic security. The people are and always have been the true driver of change in America. It is why I sit here today, to address equity, advancement of values, and positive change. But more importantly, to talk about a woman who sacrificed so much on the day she chose to sit with dignity. Rosa Parks' actions on December 1st, 1955 on that Montgomery, Alabama bus line, rejecting bus driver James Blake's order to relinquish her seat to a white man, ultimately were the spark that ignited the Montgomery bus boycott, lasting 381 days. This boycott indirectly led to the U.S. Supreme Court decision of Browder v. Gale, a decision that ruled segregation on public transit systems unconstitutional. Through this, overturning an even older case on segregation on a transit system, Plessy v. Ferguson. You see, the people were the power. Those some odd 40,000 black commuters banded together to stand for change, to walk, run, and march for change for 381 days. Like many times in history before, we see the strong actions, perseverance, and resilience of our black women become the drivers in movements. From Lucy Parsons organizing and advocating for workers' rights in the 8-hour workday in Chicago, as well as the first May Day in 1886, to Fannie Lou Hamer of Mississippi being sick and tired of being sick and tired, and working to pass landmark policy, the Voting Rights Act, ensuring that no person be denied the right to vote based on the color or race. Rosa Parks is an American hero and should be honored and remembered as such. In America, we fail to lift up our black heroes, specifically our black women heroes. With this resolution, we have the chance to do both. We have a chance to push for equity while also reminding the community that they have a voice and can make change. Our leaders and heroes are riding the bus now, unaware of the impact they will have on the world, much like Rosa Parks on that December 1st day. Please use this resolution as a chance to advance growth of values and equity. Please use this resolution as a chance to provide remembrance of Rosa Parks. Please use this resolution as a chance to provide free transit for the bus riders of the Metro community on February 4th, Rosa Parks' birthday, for our hardworking citizens. Please use this resolution as a chance to not criminalize poverty and move towards the value that public transportation is a human right. Thank you.
Thank you. Charles Ormsby and David Rainey. And Charles, we do get all your emails, and
good.
And if you're still talking about the same topic, please be brief.
I will.
All right, thank you.
Just to report very briefly to TriMet board, we did have a field meeting at the intersection of State Street and B Avenue in Lake Oswego. We are communicating. I take a little umbrage with the response of the planning director of Lake Oswego, and I will be addressing that. I've just been overwhelmed in the last month. but it points out the lingo that we all commonly have to learn and speak, and we need visual dictionaries. We need bus rider atlases so we know the jurisdictions. I'm working on that because it isn't going to happen otherwise. Also the how-to thing, how to get around the region and address not only the TriMet does a very, and I'm saying this as a 50-year TriMet rider. I have a schedule for the Dunthorpe Motor Transport in 1969, September 8th, Monday, and that was good over 50 years ago. Anyway, we need to define the terms of accessibility from the curb to a building and accessible mobility between curb sites. Example, get from this facility where we're sitting to the council chamber of the Metro Regional Headquarters. You got problems getting from 600 Northeast Grand Avenue into the building. It's about a 200-foot circumnavigation. There's no signage, so on and so forth. There are means of doing so, and I will tell you how to do them. I'm assessing that, and I'll make a visual dictionary of this so it's pretty explicit and communicate it to you. But action will need to be taken. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Morning.
Good morning. My name is David Ranney. I worked for TriMet for 35 years, and I was a light rail mechanic for 25 of those years. Went through the apprenticeship program. I became a journeyman mechanic. I worked as a floor mechanic, a rebuild mechanic, an assistant supervisor for years, and a supervisor. And I'm here to really champion the apprenticeship program. It's a great way for people to start up the ladder at TriMet, and it's really, really necessary for people to get that level of training so that they can work their way up. In 25 years, I saw instances where people were not properly trained and they damaged equipment, or preventative maintenance was deferred or not done because they didn't have the training. And TriMet has always, for some reason, felt that you can hire any mechanic to work on any machine, or you can hire any supervisor to supervise any workforce, and it's just not true. For something as complicated as a light rail vehicle with all of the systems that it has, and they all interact together, you really need the training, the in-school, in-class training, and the on-the-job training to learn how to work on those, or to supervise the people that are working on them so that they can be properly maintained. So I'll keep it brief and just say that, and I really, really appreciate being allowed to speak to you guys.
Thank
and
you.
gals. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, the next two I have is Andrew Gallagher and Joe Ruffin, both of you with ATU. And then I have one more person after that.
All right, my name's Andrew. I've been with TriMet coming up on 6 years this summer. I've completed the light rail program. And I had a long speech because I did a little bit of research about some of you and what you claim to stand for. But I'll try to keep it short. The light rail program with outside hires is going to fail. I come from a mechanical background. I built cars from the ground up. And yeah, you might know how to turn a wrench, but you don't know any of the electronic side of it. It's like walking in to a dark room. And the one question I have is, why are they trying to go for these people? I don't know if you guys have seen the list, but it says once trainees are proficient at tasks, they may be assigned to work alone. And that is what TriMet has just posted this week on TriNet. So that doesn't say they have any certifications, any actual training. Just, hey, we decided you can work on your own. That becomes a big safety issue. As for example, as an apprentice, they had Siemens do Type 4 motor leads. Well, they subbed it out again. They borrowed my tools as an apprentice to do their job. And as far as people coming from backgrounds that don't know anything. My table mate, about 2 years before coming to the U.S., was an accountant in Morocco. He is now considered one of the best mechanics on our shift. So for taking away this apprenticeship, the promises, I even had it taken away at one point and then given back. They have us bid every 6 months for our jobs. Anyways, yeah, they let us bid, told us we got it, and then took it away and gave it to outside hires, and then let us start about 6 months later.
Thank you.
Howdy, y'all. Joe Ruffin, ATU 757. Been ATU 29 years, TriMet 25. Started out automotive tech. Went to Laidlaw Transit, became a diesel mechanic there. Went to TriMet. Thought I was going to be a diesel mechanic. Started look at the fleet buses and said, screw that. If I learn a new technology, I might as well go into trains, because fleet buses is totally different from regular diesel. I saw that right off the top. Totally different breed, So I went to rail maintenance. So rail maintenance, I went through that program, became rail maintenance technician. Then long story short, I chaired the JATC. So I've been chairing the JATC for over 10, 12 years, something like that. But I saw it change lives of people that came in there. Andrew was one that came in there when I was chairing the JATC. Changed a lot of people's lives. People that were cooks, people that had no clue on how to be mechanics, returned to technicians. It changed people's lives. I've seen it change several people's lives. It's an amazing program. We're one of the best in the nation. So I sat on the E7 committee, Transportation Learning Center. We were proud. We was one of the best in the country. Everyone, we were the models for the country. We was it, like Dave K said. I know, I was there. I went to almost every transit agency there was with APA and Transportation Learning Center. We were the model. I helped write the training program for rail cars with the Transportation Learning Center. Now, as also our program disintegrate through time, as our trainers left and went down through technology of the new vehicles, that wasn't a reason for us to get rid of the program. We could have worked together to bring in new people to form it and make it better. That's all it took. Just work with the ATU, work with the JATC to bring it back. We didn't have to throw the whole thing out, and we can still revive this program. But,
Thank you.
May God
very much.
Thank you.
And the last person is Ben Fain. And thank you for your patience, everybody, hanging in there.
Mr. Warner and board members, I thank you for being flexible. Every bus operator has to be very flexible all day long. Things change, and they change pretty quickly. And for you to be flexible enough to allow everybody to speak here is pretty awesome, I believe. I have a couple of issues that I wanted to talk about, and I've talked to you about one of them before. I've talked to the ATU officers about it too. It is the step wage. Let me digress. I started driving in 1964. I drove a local delivery, then I drove school buses out of Beaverton School District, and then I drove a semi over the road for 3.5 years. Then I made a good move. I came to TriMet in 1975. I worked 26 years as an operator. I retired 18 years ago tomorrow. And my experience with TriMet has been good for me. Not everyone's the same, but that part's good, and I'm glad I am where I am. I had a 31-year National Safety Council award, and I know a little bit about driving. driving different vehicles for different groups or companies. I learned a lot about maintenance too, not repairing things, but I knew good maintenance from bad. And when I was driving a semi, I was out on the road for up to a week or 10 days. When we came back into town, we let the mechanics know what our particular tractor needed or a trailer, and it was taken care of. When I came to TriMet, you could take a look at the, I hope you'll be flexible enough to let me go beyond that light. You could take a look at the maintenance facilities down at Center Street, and there were broken windows. It looked like a building from World War II. It was worn out completely when TriMet was formed and took that over. There were birds flying in and out of the place and roosting there. And things have progressed very well in a lot of cases with TriMet. This step wage problem, when you hire people...
I have to ask you to be quick here.
Okay.
All right.
When you hire people, I know that you've had a job fair in Vegas and you've had signs on all of the buses. The best thing that you could do, in my opinion, is to get rid of that step wage. A step wage lasts 3 years. That's 36 months and 72 paydays. And you look at that thing, that's not building up your self-confidence or self-respect. The respectful thing to do for those people would to get rid of that step wage, and as soon as they're out on the bus by themselves doing the same thing that an operator who's been here 4 years is doing, that first day that they're out there by themselves, they should be paid the top wage. I was told by you and by Mr. Kelsey and Mr. Pruser and some union officers that this is a contract issue. Ben, you got to go through the contract. Well, we're in the middle of a contract right now, I believe. And I think the next time you get together on both sides, you should talk about getting rid of that step wage. Those people are people too. The other issue I want to talk about is the apprenticeship program. Apprenticeships
you got 15 seconds, okay?
Oh, man. I
do
saw
it.
a picture of a bridge that a friend of mine who was visiting family in Iran had taken. The bridge was something like 1,200 years old. That wasn't built by some guy finding some rocks and a little bit of mud and sticking it together. That bridge is going to last probably a lot longer than Tillicum Crossing will. And it's still as straight as it was the day it was set. That's what training does. There's training in apprenticeship training in all sorts of professions. And some of those people become artists, whether they believe it or not, tile setters especially.
All right.
This apprenticeship program here gives confidence to the drivers, and it should give confidence to the riders, and it's also an important part of traffic safety here in town. When you have a problem with the bus and if it's stalled in traffic, somebody comes out there that knows what to do. The other part of this apprenticeship is that the industry has done itself a problem by buying different buses from different manufacturers, and every damn one of those wants proprietary issues that's peculiar to their thing only.
All right, Ben. Thank you, Ben. I'm going to have to cut you off.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. I really appreciate your comments.
Okay.
Just super quick comment. I don't make a lot of comments, but Ben, I don't know if you remembered Apano, but you drove a bunch of community members, Apano, from Southeast Portland to the Capitol, and I was always in touch with you. So thank you for always doing that every year. Just wanted to say thank you.
And they sold that last bus just last year, so I'm walking again, but I'm ready. I've got other things to do, and being here has allowed me to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, one other thing that I got to make, and I might not be to another one of these meetings. One of the most valuable assets that TriMet has are the trained mechanics, the apprenticeship trained mechanics, and that should be considered every time that word apprenticeship comes in here. That is a valuable asset.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, that concludes the public testimony this morning. I do want to say, again, appreciate everybody coming in, and there's some obviously very strongly felt opinions about, especially the apprenticeship program. I think the general manager and I have talked that it is time to get the board together in executive session and get an update of where we are in negotiations and talk about some of the issues that are there and where we want them to go. So I think is everybody comfortable we ought to do that? I think the board, and if we need to have a special time to do that, Mr. General Manager, work with us to do that. And then everything, I think, from Mary Longoria, is she still here? Yeah, I wanted to tell you, I looked at this article. I think, if I remember right, this was an editorial that was done by the Tribune. They wanted to talk to me about essentially what was going on. If you remember, in 2012, was not a pleasant time, and the union was rather, I think, had a singular focus on the current general manager, Neil McFarland, as being the problem with having to talk about service cuts, fare increases, or making sustainable benefits for all of our employees, union and non-union. And essentially my comment at that time was that Neil is operating under full understanding and support of the board. And I agree that was the case, and we respect what he's trying to make happen. And so it was to help, again, him under the tack he was at that time. But I think what we will do is we'll go back through our executive session and again, make sure that we're all on the same page. But we continue as a board, what we need to do is support our general manager and his team. And if we need to make some changes in direction, we will do that. Okay? Thank you. And you can have this back if you'd like. So does the board need maybe a 5-minute break? Yep. I think we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll get back to the regular business. Remember how much fun that was?
Oh, yeah, of course.
I have no idea. We will find out. It'll pop up on a YouTube somewhere. Are we ready to reconvene here? I'm looking, a couple board members, I know they must be out there somewhere.
Yeah, Kathy and
They're both back there.
Laura, Linda.
Oh, Linda. He's back there too.
Yeah, I see Linda's talking to someone.
Okay. Well, I'm going to call the regular business meeting of the TriMet Board of Directors for January 22nd, 2020 to order. And we'll go right into our board reports. And the first report is the Finance and Audit Committee, Director Stovall.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I was hoping that more people would stay for the Finance and Audit Committee report, but I can see they're already gone. Maybe next month. Good morning, audience, both here and watching by video, and board members. This morning in the Finance and Audit Committee, we talked about 3 things that are on our agenda. We got a quick update on the Southwest Corridor and a brief review of a draft document that's going to go out here within the next couple of weeks. That's a gorgeous document that actually highlights some of the great things that are going on in that Southwest Corridor work. And I applaud Steve Witter and his team and those folks who have worked hard putting that together to really give the public a really good view on what's going on and some of the things that we're looking at as we look to solve the transportation issue as we go south. Another update that we got was in regards to the Transportation 2020, so T2020, and how that's moving along, some of the trade-offs that we're going to be looking at there. So kind of an update of where that is, and again, looking at how that's going to potentially impact TriMet and beyond. And then lastly, we got a quick budget update looking at some of the budget assumptions going into the fiscal 2021 scenario, and just looking at some of those key budget assumptions that will go into building the budget. So there are quite a few items on that list, but as we put those things together, those eventually will be shared with the board. This was some of the initial perspective, so that the Finance and Audit Committee could actually give some feedback and some guidance as the budget is put together. That were the kind of the 3 critical items that we talked about at the Finance and Audit Committee. Any questions or comments in regards to that? I do have one follow-up from the prior board meeting. I think there was probably a little bit of a misunderstanding in my comment about free transit. First and foremost, I will tell you that I have not seen anything, personally as a board member, that would encourage myself to be fully supportive of free transit in that regard. I believe it's something that as it continues to be looked at across the country, as an agency, we should have an eye towards that. But at this point in time, I'm not supportive of free transit. I think we've got a lot of great things as an agency that we have done and will continue to do to utilize transportation as a key metric for moving people to poverty, prosperity. As you already know, that's one of my greatest passions, to see us be that avenue towards that and to make sure that we're there. But as we look at transit and as we look at paying our fair share, I am a full supporter of that concept. And as a Finance and Audit Committee, we did look at some information in comparison to some of the things that are going on and some of the conversations that are going on about free transit, but we have not done any type of full report or full review or anything like that. And at this point, there's not anything that's on the agenda to do some type of full-blown review of that information or that data at this point in time. So I just wanted to clarify, because I think there was some misunderstanding based on some things that I've read in the media. And again, if you have any questions or comments, I'm happy to answer those in that regard.
Comments, questions?
Question on that. Thank you for that report and that update, Travis. I was just curious if there will be a possibility in the future for TriMet. Maybe it won't be in the next budget review cycle, but will there be an opportunity for us as an agency to explore the mechanics and the budgetary details of what free transit could be? I'm just saying that as one board member, so I don't want the public to also think currently that our full board is taking a position on this. But as an individual board member, and after hearing a lot of the community talking about this and continuing to see some decreases in ridership, I think it is beneficial for our agency to at least study what that could possibly look like. So this is for a question for the future, if there has been some conversations about that.
So, from an finance and audit committee perspective, there hasn't been any in-depth discussions or conversations about it now or in the future. But I mean, the economics of all of these things are always dynamic. So I can't say whether or not the board will not look further and deeper into this in the future. I mean, that's really not something that at this point we would look to tie the future board's hands. But I'd be happy to, touch base with you and talk about some of the things, from my opportunity to see kind of the finance and audit things, and talk about some of the economics there. But to get to kind of that insight as to what you see and what you hear. At this point in time, there aren't any, full-blown plans to do some, deeper research. We've reviewed some of the things that are going on across the country. At that time, just as a cursory review to answer the questions of are there any out there that are doing this. Of course, Kansas City is just entering that fray. They're a much smaller agency, and it's specific to Kansas City, Kansas, Missouri, downtown, most likely. I'm from Kansas City, by the way. Go Chiefs.
Yes.
It's been 50 years, folks. 50 years.
You look good.
We have not been in the Super Bowl since I've been alive. So if they could just give it to us, it'd be great. So, in that regard, again, from a finance and audit committee staff, once we looked at some of that initial information, and out of that, there really hasn't been anything that's projected that we would do a deeper look. And then I think it would be very interesting, and I'd love to do this with you, kind of once we get a little bit deeper into the budget session. Start talking about, take the 2020 budget, and every time we do a budget, we actually extend that out years into the future to know what the impact's going to be. I think that's a great foundation just as board members to sit together and take a look at what those trade-offs are, to say, okay, if we wanted to achieve this, if we want to achieve things that are these competing efforts within our communities, at some point, what does it look like to fully go electric, and what does it look like to achieve some of these great initiatives? All that stuff has trade-offs that need to be looked at, and when we start talking about those types of things. But at this point in time, from where I sit, I don't think there's a major effort or push to go deeper into this once we've had that cursory review of what things look like there. But again, in the medium to long range future, who knows how the economics change and what that looks like.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I appreciate the response to that. I think that as individual board members, we are going to have different opinions, right? We are going to have different ideas of the direction of our agency, and we, while we have to speak with one voice at times, I think that the responsibility of each board member is also to make sure that diverse perspectives are being represented and heard, and that there are rooms to grow in terms of new voices that are included in various committees that we are on. So just wanted to state that I would be particularly interested in serving on additional committees so that I can lend some perspective there, because if we're all saying that change is never going to happen, then we're not going to progress. We're not going to get anywhere. So, thank you.
Great. Director Gonzalez.
Thank you. Not so much a question, Director Stovall. Thank you for the report, but in light of having missed last month's conversation as well, just want to make it clear. I know that we the agency did not initiate the conversation about free or fairless or the interest in that avenue. And I know that today's report isn't going to conclude that conversation out in the public. So I just want to make it very clear that I understand there's a lot of interest out there around this topic. And I know that as a board, yes, we each have even votes, and any way we slice it, this idea, for it to materialize, means a lot of, probably a lot of erasers are going to get spent, and a lot of thinking has to be done. And I'd welcome anyone really thinking through these examples to bring something forward, because there are examples out there already in single agency scenarios. We have 24 cities, 3 counties that we would have to grapple with. It would be unfortunate to think about this as a single city solution. though I know that most of the commentary is coming from a single city source, I would love to hear what that could look like if someone out in the public has really thought through what such a thing would be. But I know that anything we can do or any conversations we have internally aren't going to end the interest of this conversation outside. So I just want to make sure that we recognize we're not shutting down this idea. We're just at this point, what I'm hearing is the idea is not proceeding right now through the internal channels of finance planning. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That would be correct.
Thank
yes.
Mr. General Manager, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I do. Thank you. I think like many topics that we are at the intersection of a lot of societal conversation, and that's a good thing. And what I might suggest is, if the board is comfortable, I'd like to do a scan, at least on this, and maybe bring back to a board strategy session in the future, not with the answers, but just to try and understand some of the dynamics that are coming with this. Whether it be around the region or what are other cities doing or not doing. So you've seen examples, you've heard like Kansas City, where actually Sam Dessous used to be the deputy CEO there. That's what most people don't realize. Kansas City is one of 4 transit systems there, and it's a fairly small one. And also the Fairless system is actually unfunded. Houston's just done an analysis, which I passed to the board. So I think there's dynamics out there. Some people want to have a conversation. I would suggest, if you're comfortable, let us bring it back to a future strategy session to at least see what the photograph of the moment looks like.
And I think that's fair. I think it's also obviously every year when we do our work plans and priorities, that's the time when we should start talking about it, things we want to spend some additional time on. I think that would be very helpful to determine as a board if we want to move forward to that. But I do recognize not everybody's going to be feeling exactly the same on one issue or another, but that's why we're here.
Yeah.
We get to have those differing opinions.
So I would just make a brief recommendation that be done in accordance with kind of the budget review, because I think the next fiscal year's budget gives us a grand opportunity to kind of just say, wow, these are the things that we're looking to achieve as an agency. These are some of the things that, because I think without that, it's a little bit tougher to do kind of just even a brief, cursory analysis to understand trade-offs.
Yeah, what I was going to suggest is, I think for this budget cycle, sort of to have the conversation is one thing, to implement it is something really
Correct.
Significant.
Yes,
that
of course.
This agency has, in fact, essentially no capacity financially unless somebody injects a giant revenue stream to absorb it. So what I might suggest, if you're comfortable, is to bring it forward to next budget cycle's board strategy session in the fall, where we actually have more time as opposed to a fairly short briefing, at which time we would bring up the financial elements that would come with that next budget cycle. Where it allows us time to digest some of this a little bit further, including a lot of the dynamics that are commitments that gone on with great conversation today, like the carbon discussion. It doesn't hurt when you say it fast, but it's got a lot of complexity and implications, and I think those dynamics have to be factored into our obligations to serve today and the financial implications, resourcing implications around the positioning this conversation for tomorrow as well. So if the board's comfortable with that, I put that forward for next, I'll call September's board strategy session, where we actually have the time to get into this.
If I remember this last year, we started in August and then another one in October, right? Is that what we did?
Correct, yeah. So August was, and it seems to be working okay, subject to your guidance, August is really looking at the year in review. How did we do? The position, the thinking for the September session, which really says, now let's take the year in review, plus how do we want to look as management, then takes back to start to contemplate the implications of that strategy, which, as an example, you'll see Ellen Lato coming up here shortly to talk about. So this is a long-term kind of conversation, in my opinion. That's what I would put forward to the board's consideration.
I'm seeing nods here, so thank you. Okay. Good. Well, that was a quick finance committee. Let's move on to the Committee on Accessible Transportation. Director Baumann.
Yes, good morning. The Committee on Accessible Transportation met last week on January 15th, and here's a quick report. As always, it was a very full agenda. Chris Hunter was introduced as the new manager of lift eligibility. Alan Lato came and reported on the updating of the business plan, and he welcomed comments by CAP members on the draft plan. Sam Dessous attended, and he addressed several issues He said that in December there was a determination that Broadway Cab had failed to comply with certain federal regulations around drug and alcohol testing, and as a consequence, Broadway Cab was unavailable to serve Lyft customers for a couple of days in December. That did cause disruptions of service on those days. Those compliance issues have since been resolved. Sam also described the work that's coming up on the Steel Bridge in August that is going to have an impact on service. Lieutenant Rachel Andrew reported that the transit police are going to move into their new headquarters in July. And she said that the transit police are continuing their efforts to address camping on TriMet property and also individuals sleeping on the 24-hour bus lines. Brenda Martin, who works in planning, reviewed some of the details of the Rose Lane project, and she talked about 2 upcoming open houses on bicycle and pedestrian initiatives. There were 3 Lyft operations reports. They included a report from Broadway Cab about concerns about rude dispatchers. So there are ongoing training of dispatchers and drivers to improve customer service. There's a report from MTM, and that's the contractor that helps to assess whether individuals qualify for Lyft service. They reported that in the fourth quarter of 2019, they conducted 615 assessments of potential Lyft customers. There was a report from Carol Cottingham of ODOT. The state is implementing a settlement of a lawsuit claiming ADA violations by ODOT, and they're stepping up their efforts to add curb cuts and crosswalks and to improve the ADA complaint process. And finally, Eileen Collins reported that the new automated dispatch system for Lyft is working well, and customers are happy with the changes. And that's the report.
Good. Questions or comments
A lot.
for Director Baumann? Seeing none. Oh, yes.
Just one small point of clarification. I think the reference into Broadway Cabs was actually a state oversight where they revoked their license as opposed to a federal one, just so small subtlety.
Thank you.
Point of clarification.
All right. I believe that there's nothing to report from MPAC this morning, so I'm going to go right to the Transit Equity Advisory Committee, or TEAC as we call it. Director Gonzalez.
Thank you. We met last week and had a series of reports with the Transit Equity Advisory Committee. There was a report from the Youth Committee, which is in the formation stages, really trying to solidify how to enable participation from the youth. So there was some brief discussion about that. We had an update on the 2020 bond measure. It was, I believe, Andy O'Connell stepped in to provide a brief update on what were the recommended projects that were moving forward. So there was some discussion around that. A visitor from PBOT came into the TEAC meeting, April Bertelson, to update on the Rose Lane project, to show a few maps on some of the proposed lanes and just lay out the plan for how it's going to implement, and demonstrated the monitor, modify, and decide what becomes permanent model that they've established. They did invite everyone to contribute feedback through their Survey Monkey, so PBOT has a survey out about it. And then there was some language provided to TEAC regarding the TEAC charter. So all of the individual organizations participating were asked to review the charter with their respective organizations and get back to them on what's working, what's not working, on how we can really leverage TEAC as an operational body. And that concludes my report, unless someone has questions.
Questions for Director Gonzalez? I'm seeing none. Thank you for that report. Good. Sounds like you're making some good progress and allowing folks to provide us input on how best to utilize that committee. That's great.
As best we could. Thank you.
All right. That concludes the board reports. The next item on the agenda is the General Manager's report. Mr. General Manager, do you have something for us today?
I do. I have a number of things. To the points and the delegations on quite a spectrum today. As you've correctly commented on the apprenticeship program, so it's something we'll do a briefing executive session for the board as we've discussed, but I do not want to get into this in the public realm because we are in bargaining as well. So first point. The second one is I do want to comment on the electrification side of things. Firstly, it's like the world. I was very fortunate to be invited by Mayor Wheeler over to Copenhagen. I was actually at the Mayor's C40 conference with many people you would publicly recognize. And coming back from that, you've probably seen public announcement, hopefully the public has, around some significant commitments this agency in fact has made. In fact, I would suggest we're probably leading the country on many, many fronts. So starting next month, we will be 100% the first in the country wind power on the whole MAC system. That is a first. We are conducting our first ever strategic review and waste audit, stream audit, to look at to ultimately get to a net zero. So over the next year, we're going to conduct that audit as a benchmark, as a baseline audit first. Then over this next year, we'll start developing the long-term strategy, ultimately to get this agency to a net zero place. Not sure of year, time. I think we need the baseline of the implications of it that we financially and otherwise, policy-wise, can absorb and afford. We are also made a significant commitment with real money of converting our existing bus fleet over, conventional bus fleet over from ultra-low sulfur diesel to B99, an 80-20 blend. That's about a $2.5 million financial hit. We are taking that on now. That is a significant, so reducing our existing carbon footprint while we transition out of diesel. Again, it's one of those things that doesn't hurt when you say it fast, but to make that we are buying only electric buses right now, because we are in transition, you have to be able to plug them in somewhere. So there's a whole infrastructure change of all of our facilities, and as some of the others have spoken about today, the mechanics, the training, the industry is in transformation right now. We also, while we get there, and so we also made a commitment by 2025, I made a commitment that by 2025 and after, if we can do it before, we will be buying only electric buses or hydrogen. I think we've committed, I would come back to the board because the technology is still evolving. And in fact, we see that right here. So we have 5 electric buses today. And if I go back from December 23rd or 24th, I may have the date not quite right, we literally had all 5 of them parked because they were broken and not working. And so so you need a product that can actually work. And so everyone just thinks it's a check mark and done. It is not. The mayor of Phoenix, for example, when they went electric, the mayor of Phoenix actually pulled all the buses off, or I think it was Albuquerque, actually, I'm wrong, actually pulled all their electric buses off because they were not performing. So the industry is still transitioning to a stabilized product. I think it would be pretty dangerous to put a product out there that can't actually get people where they want to go with a reliability state. So we are taking the journey operationally. We're taking the journey in a very significant capital transformation, and really want to thank our PGE partners for helping us do that, like at Powell Garage, with that whole retrofit for approximately $150 million, while we get to understanding the performance of the technology, let alone whether it be hydrogen or electric. So as I committed to the board, I will come back in about 4 years, as we're still going to be at about 70 to 80 electric buses here just the next few years, which is more than anyone else in the state combined will have. So we accept the challenge, but we have to deliver on this, the technology, the performance, the capital, the transformation, our people can actually execute it. And we're not alone. The country is going through this as well. So I just wanted I'm trying to blend the aspiration with the perspiration of how you actually do it, if you will, because we got to make it work. So, I just wanted to respond to that. The report, first I'd like to do is I'm going to cover the quarterly performance report. Then I'd like to talk about our December ridership, some good news there. Then I also want to give you a quick update on HOP, and then also talk about the feedback you had given us to on the business plan as it now goes out for any public comment. So, firstly, quarterly performance, I'm just calling up Chief Operating Officer Sam Dessous and Brett Rogers. Both are doing a great job for us to cover off the quarterly report. So, gentlemen, over to you.
Morning, President Warner and board members. We're here to present to you the 2019 third quarter, and that's July, August, and September performance report highlights. We will be comparing 2018 third quarter to 2019 third quarter in this report here.
couple of key points that I wanted to just point out here is that our rail rule violations are down 37% since the end of 2017, and that's a significant achievement there. Also, the second key point here is our max collision rate is the lowest that it's been in 5 years. So those two key points I wanted to just call out here. So let's start off here with our bus and max on-time performance for the third quarter of last year. And I'm using calendar year 2019 here. So we were at 90% on-time performance for our max services. And for our bus services, we were at 86%. So we had a change of 1.5% increase of on-time performance, third quarter to third quarter comparison. And then on our on our bus on-time performance, we basically remained stable and unchanged. A couple of key points here is that we continue to emphasize to our employees to leave the yard on time and also make sure that they leave the garage on time. Next slide. Our west on-time performance have seen a significant increase when you compare the quarters. We've moved 4.5% increase on west. A couple of things occurred in 2018 in the third quarter was we were doing all of the positive control trains and the control work that was taking place. Also during that time frame in 2018, we had a little bit of heat in the construction, which had us do a tremendous increase on the on-time performance. Our fixed route bus operator complaints per 100,000 boardings have increased on the service delivery side. And if you look at the service delivery, it's complaints about our vehicles being on time. So we had a decrease by 1.3% with our vehicle complaints. And also from our operator-related complaints, we had a reduction of 0.5% also there. And then our safety complaints remain pretty stable when you compare the 2 years. The key point here is as OTP increases, our delivery complaints decreases. Basically, both our public relation complaints and our safety complaints are stable. One thing I wanted to point out here is Director Way and Edwards requested our complaints to be broken down by category, and this will be something that I'll show you here very shortly. Next slide is our max operator complaints per 100,000 boardings. We've seen a decrease on the service delivery side with complaints at 0.2%, and also on our operator-related complaints or our public relation complaints was down 0.1%. Our safety-related complaints here remain pretty stable here. And again, as I stated on the bus side, as OTP increases, our service delivery complaints decline. So one of the things I want to put in perspective, if you look at the safety complaints there, so for every 100,000 boardings that we have on max, we have 4 safety complaints. So here's just the graph that Director Way and Edwards requested. Our categories are from our SIP process or our service improvement process. On the bus side, we have 14 categories, and during this quarter, this third quarter of calendar year 2019, there were 653 complaints during that quarter on the bus side. And then on the MAG side, we had 9 categories and we had 54 complaints. So again, to put it in perspective, on the bus with 653 complaints, we had 14.3 million boardings during that time frame. On the MAX, we had 54 complaints and we had 9.5 million boardings during that time frame. So as I stated at the beginning of this presentation here, one of the key points of success for the quarter was the reduction in rule violations here. So for the third quarter of 2019, we reduced by 21% in the third quarter. And then overall, since 2017, we've had a 37% reduction and rule rail violations. And this is hats off to the team. They've been working very hard. The managers, the operators have worked very hard, and our training staff, to make sure that we identify the needs to refresh our operators on the routes and the lines that they've not operated within the past year. So this is a significant improvement. Our lift, miles between road calls, for the calendar year, we had a 73% increase on miles between road calls. What we're doing here is that we are replacing the older, less reliable vehicles, both in Q1 and Q2 of 2019. We replaced 27 vehicles. And as we replaced those vehicles, it led to the improved performance that you see here. Our fixed route bus mean distance between failures, we've seen an increase over 2018 by 21.7%. The keys here are twofold. One, we have a bus mechanic supervisor that we've placed into our operator control center. At one time, we've had a lot of requests for bus changes. And what we've done is put a supervisor in the control center so that when those changes are requested, the supervisor is able to triage the situation without having a change in bus. So they're able to walk through over the radio and make the repair on the spot without bringing the bus in. Now, if there's a safety issue, the supervisor will have the individual bring the bus back in and replace it. The other piece that I think is very critical here is that our fleet age has been reduced from 16 years to 8 years. So again, we're changing our vehicles, and we're taking our least reliable vehicles and moving them from the active fleet to our contingency fleet. Our Mike's light rail mean distance between failures had a decrease also, or increase I should say, of 27.4%, or either 2,332 miles. Again, I want to say hats off to our maintenance team. Our maintenance have done a wonderful job with ensuring that all of our programs and maintenance is taken care of. There were a key issue that made the change here drastically. Our REM group overhauled all of our type 2 and 3 auxiliary inverters. And for those of you that don't know what an inverter is, it's the device that changes direct current to alternating current, and we were having some problems with our inverters during this period here. So you see the change that's there. Again, reliability and availability of the vehicles. Our fixed route bus collision per 100,000 miles, we have moved to 5.4 collisions, which was a 2.1% change. And the decline was primarily driven by the decrease in mirror strikes that we were having. A lot of refresher training that we just went through, and also great input from all of our managers on safety messages out to drive with a bigger picture. Next slide is our max collisions per 100,000 miles. For calendar year 19, we are at our lowest currently at 0.86 collisions. And this has been our lowest over the last 5 years. One of the things here is that most of our collisions with the max are not due to operator fault. We have folks that drive in our right-of-ways, which I'll touch on here on the next slide. And we've also went out and started adding safety delineators on the east side of town just to keep people out of their rail alignment. But this is hats off to the team on the training and retraining. And then finally, the last graph here that we will present to you is the graph that was requested by Director Wade, just as well as Edwards, is to identify areas where the max collisions are happening. So if you look at the graph there, it shows 4 boxes on the graph. 70% of all of our collisions occur in the areas that's noted in those red boxes. And that's a total of 244 collisions over the last 5 years in the red boxes. We have formed a safety task force with our groups, just as well as we have put together a continuous improvement team to do research and look at ways to mitigate some of the collisions, just as well as some of the autos that's in the right-of-way. A couple of points here I want to make is in the downtown area. We're driving the trains in the downtown unprotected. So we have people that cross and turn in front of the vehicles. Drivers have to be on guard at all times and to make sure that they keep our passengers safe. So this concludes the third quarter performance report, and both Brett and I, we will take questions.
Yes, Director Edwards.
You said that you have folks driving on the right of way. What are the frequency of those occurrences?
So in the last 2 months, Doug and I have been talking to each other kind of around the clock about the situation. We've had quite a bit for the months of December and January, and I would say upwards to 20 different occasions. I think 2 to 3 per week is what we're seeing with people intruding into the right-of-way. So this is a issue that we're looking at now, is to go out, look at our signage, look at our delineators, look at ballards, look at everything to protect it. We also, during the holiday time, we had quite a few drunk drivers that intruded into the right-of-way during that time frame also.
Can I just add to this? That's a great question. We're basically averaging about 1 every day and a half to 2. Now, we forget we've got about 100 miles of congested, we run with mixed traffic, the public. And so I've asked Sam and team to look at basically a heat map. Where are these occurring, time of day? Let's use the GIS of the world to understand the technology. And not only what can we do to mitigate some of those occurring, and we have done some steps in the past, but also what is our response once we get it. So the goal is, how do you keep the system resilient? Because our customers don't really care. All they need to know is where they're going. They don't even see what's ahead. So there's a resiliency side to the trust of the system. So we have to remove those barriers, and it's a really significant one. And one of the real big ones is the steel bridge. So it's a great question. It's on our attack plan, but we got to understand the evidence and the data, and that's where we are right now. So,
thank you.
Nope.
Real quick, I saw that yesterday, I think, on social media, you pushed out a blog post on the subject of is it okay to drive on the MAX and streetcar tracks downtown? And I thought that was a very helpful article, kind of laying it out for drivers, how they shouldn't be blocking downtown.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Our goal is safety first, and making sure that we keep the alignment free of all vehicles.
I just wanted to add, I'm noticing many of those hotspots occur in District 2. There's an annual trend that happens in the holiday season with folks visiting their family members here in Portland, and it's not uncommon in December to have a lot of people that are unfamiliar with those conditions in downtown, that don't come here very often or might be here for the first time. So I think being cognizant of how we're making it easier for those that are visiting, that don't come here and see those types of lane designations very often, it could be quite confusing. And I think that signage and clarity, especially leaning into it in the holiday season, can do something to really move the needle on this, because it seems to be a hot spot, not just geographically, but in the calendar as well.
Good comment.
Thank you. Again, thanks to Brett, thanks to Sam and the whole team, because this is, if you look at the charts, this is part of a cultural change of how we do our business. You start to look at the trajectory of the trends, and most of them all in the right way.
They are.
So this is how we rewire. And just as a reminder, Shelley Lancers and myself, we were in another city looking at transit-oriented development. We were actually speaking to, this is quite a number of months ago, we're speaking to one very large TOD. It was a $2 billion single-site TOD, very big. The first thing that the person asked us about was, is your transit system reliable and fast? And so these are all the examples why you have to wire, because they can't sell units to create access to something that people aren't prepared to build their lives on. So this has a lot of unintended consequences. And yes, when we took this on a number of years ago, people, the board would have heard, gee, it's on-time performance at the choice of safety. Well, I think that's not the case. You can be safe and you can be on time. And again, safety trumps in all cases. So, and I think we're showing that you can move the trajectory and use your pedal, your gas, and your brake of safety to get where you want to go. So I think this is, just a real tribute to all the maintenance team, the transportation team, I'll call it our internal village to make some of these changes. So thank you. Next one up is, again, let's to talk about the ridership. So this is sort of the changes we're making internally. So some of the ridership trends we're seeing, I think, are looking encouraging here. So TriMet, we provided for December more than just under 7.6 million rides in December. The number reflects it's a weekly system-wide increase of nearly 3% over December. So if we go back the last number of months where the trends are, people were saying it's down, in fact, that is not the case. We continue to be up not just for a month, but is now trending for about a half a year plus. If we zoom out to the aggregate industry, recent information came, in fact, the industry in the United States was up 2.2% last year. Now that was driven by WMATA, which is Washington, D.C., and MTA, which are some of the two biggest agencies. So we're doing our part, I think, with some of the HB 17 legislation, the employer payroll tax, some of the changes we're making, how to do more with less. So I think the trajectory is looking encouraging. The bus ridership was up 4.8% on the weekly basis, quite robust. Again, as I said, December marked the 9th consecutive month of increasing bus ridership. So I would suggest that is now a trend. And we want to keep leveraging that. And part of that's service expansion since September 2018. We saw more than 174,000 weekday bus trips. Now that's a 5% increase, 5.1% increase over the previous year. Peak period saw the largest gain at 5.6%. The system-wide ridership max was up slightly, but still relatively flat. And the exception on this, though, was the orange line was up nearly 9% comparing December, year over year December. And Wes, I'm not sure if we're bending the trajectory, less ridership decrease, but it was down 2.8%. Again, continue to be a challenge for the agency. Third topic I'd like to cover off is our HOP transition. So as the board knows, we're hitting this important piece where we sent the signal last mid-year, we're going to get out of paper. We've been now working up to no paper. So you may have seen some of those communications, and as always, potentially a risky transition. So I think as of January 1st, we no longer accept the foil stamp paper tickets or the tickets purchased at on the mobile app. The transition has followed more than a year of this transition, included many dozens of our on-site ticket exchanges, thousands of ticket exchange transactions at our TriMet ticket office. Since April of last year, the ticket office exchanged more than $675,000 in old fares, paper for the new HOP card, which is all excellent. So far, it's actually gone very smooth and amazingly successful, particularly compared to what other transit agencies have gone through, and the volumes that we carry on the system on a daily basis. In many cases, because we were paper, we didn't even know who they were or use our system. So it's actually tracking those out from an institutional perspective, let alone an individual perspective. In the first 2 weeks, we received a total of 7 documented complaints out of all the ridership that we carry about this transition. So when we look at 7 complaints against 3.5 million rides over the same 2-week period, that's pretty amazing, frankly. And a real tribute to JC, Vanata, Ryan Shaw, the whole team that's been going through these logistics on a very complex software implementation. No single theme. They did express the growing pains with the need to tap before riding. So that is a cultural change. We're asking people for another step when they just kind of gone on and off the system. So less so on the bus, more so on what's seen as the open train system. Again, it's going to continue. We've also tried to manage behind the scenes appropriate fare requests, fare enforcement. So people are in transition. It's not we're the ones imposing the change, not them. So we're trying to manage this in a delicate, human way, and the tie goes to the customer. And so, but we will be, as we have to continue to tighten up fair enforcement, this is part of the transition that we've made the change on. So just letting folks know that we really want to be sensitive to this transition, this cultural change. Again, we also want to thank the riders, not only our staff, they are making the change. So I take the bus pretty well every day, and I love hearing that delink, 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 delink. That, if you go back about 8 months ago, don't quote me on that, that's a pretty bad impression. But you're seeing it consistently now. I hope you are, I sure am, and that's a good thing. So now we're past the nucleus of not only getting our public transferred over, our single riders, but also our institutional, the large organizations that has been challenging to get them across the finish line, is we don't have the direct one-to-one relationship, they do. And they actually go out and buy their tickets in a multitude of ways which we didn't even know in the past. So again, it's a lot of hard work. It is another part of the cultural change we're trying to make, but I think this is actually a really great story. So just wanted to give you a quick update and on that. Business plan, maybe Ellen, if you're available, I'd like to call you up, and we'll just take a couple minutes, because if we go back to what we referred to earlier, the November strategy session, we have taken your comments, and Ellen's just going to kind of do a quick summary for you, and then I don't think this will take too long. I don't believe so. Over to you, Ellen.
No, especially watching the clock. I will try to be brief. Mr. President, members of the board, here to introduce the draft business plan for the coming fiscal year 2021 through 2025. I just want to say a couple of brief items about this. First, it is, it will be posted soon, so it's available obviously for your review, for review by staff, but also review by and comment by the public through the end of February. And we, as Doug was alluding to, we had several sessions with you all to look at the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and challenges, also the long-term strategic priorities, and the more focused points of emphasis for FY 2021. And those conversations informed this draft. So hopefully you will see what you were talking about there. I also want to just point out at the very high level to the point that Doug was just talking about. When we wrote the first business plan, we set the original target for HOP to be at 75% of incoming fares by FY 2022. We are currently above 75%, and the trend is upward. So we actually have one objective that is now complete under the original business plan. And so we celebrate that in this one. We also have, as you know, there are key strategic actions, which are the lowest level that are introduced in the business plan. We've completed 18 of those, and those are called out as well. So we are making progress. We also, as you know, indicate which measures are sort of on target, which are too close, we need to take caution with, and which are off target. We're 61 on target, 18 caution, and 10 below target. So in the aggregate, things are going well. There are certainly things that we need to pay attention to, and those are called out. But in the aggregate, things are going well. As you go through it, you will find fewer, more focused, and better defined key strategic actions, in addition to a new introduction this year of seeing a matrix of actually which fiscal year the efforts are focused in. That helps us organize and coordinate better, focus our efforts, and make sure that we're actually aligning our ability of staff to deliver these things. So that's kind of the brief overview. The timeline on this is, in order to do what you asked us to do, which was to make sure that we were developing the business plan in advance of the budget, so that our thinking about this can guide our thinking about the budget. We have to come to you with this draft business plan now. We will come back in March after incorporating all the comments and whatever other edits come back to the March board meeting with a final for your final review. And then at that same board meeting, you will see the initial proposed budget and then the final budget in May. This will go into effect as of July 1st of FY21, and as with all business plans, it's a 5-year look ahead. The focus on the initial efforts are the first year, but you can see the 5-year efforts, key strategic actions laid out. There's some other smaller improvements in here, which I hope you will notice as you go through it, but I won't belabor them at this point.
The only comment I would just add to this is what's not quietly is an underpinning here. This is the largest expansion in this agency's history while we are rewiring how we do our processes internally. At the same time, we're overlaying the need to get to a carbon future that we hadn't all thought about that was as important as it is today. So this is a intersection of a amazingly talented set of people in this organization while we go through literally transformation externally as well as internally. So it's not in there called out, but I really want to thank our team and the executive team in particular for going through this. I went through this at Starbucks Coffee and others. Rapid change and complex change on a multi-billion-dollar platform is not easy. So I just say all the people involved in this from every corner of the agency is a significant undertaking that you see in front of you today.
Any comments, questions? Yes.
Yeah.
Director Gonzalez.
Thank you for the great overview. Just a quick question with regards to one of the goals around environmental sustainability and stewardship. I was really interested in one of the upcoming goals around the development of carbon lens. I wasn't clear on how that's going to move about. Is that a formation of a committee? How are we looking to do that? And I'm okay with getting the answer in another moment if this is not the appropriate moment.
So I'll like to buy a vowel on this one a little bit of time. But I think the first thing we're going to do is look at this internally, and then we will bring that back to the board. And again, we'll be looking for some public input as well on this. So it's intended to be how we look at procurement, how we look at our supply chain management, how we factor this in dealing with our contractors in the future. So this has a lot of complexity in it that we will, and welcome people's comments, because we're going to be learning while we go through the developing of this. So this is somewhat uncharted territory for us.
Well, let me just offer up my intrigue and interest with this one, because my years with CH2M and doing carbon calculations and advising on environmental responsibility in a supply chain is something that I'm happy to bring to the table when it's appropriate.
Terrific.
We will have already signed you up by the time you finish your last sentence, so thank you. We'll need your help, so thank you.
See what happens when I raise my hand.
There you go. Director Edwards?
Yes, thank you for the report. If I remember correctly, I think we had emphasized too diversity, and also in that diversity, making sure that we had benchmarks and were able to look at that and say, okay, this is working, this is not working, so we could have some flexibility in that to make sure that we were achieving our goals. I don't expect to get all the little nuances of that now, but I'd like to meet with you and have that conversation.
Happy to follow up. There are measures in here that I think speak to that, but happy to follow up at your convenience.
And the other part of that too is, I'm really big on educating our youth as to these career opportunities that would exist with TriMet, and how we would reach out to them as well, especially communities of color, reaching out to make sure that those youth either had an intern opportunity or an opportunity to learn about what they need to do as far as their education, to make sure that they had an opportunity to get some of these career opportunities at TriMet. So.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Director Webb.
I think I just have just a couple of questions, or maybe just one big question. Sorry, but is there a place here where we can tell the path to how we got to this point? Meaning, is there a section on community engagement and community feedback? Because I'm looking at this, and as a TriMet board member, I want us to adopt this next year, and I want us to be agency ambassadors, right, to go into the community and say, this is our roadmap for the next couple of years, but I'm not seeing where and how people can open this and say, oh yes, I was a part of this stakeholders group, right, that identifies as someone from a community of color, or someone with a disability, or someone who lives in outer East Portland, just as examples of stakeholders that we might engage with. So can there be a section in here that talks about what has our community engagement process look like? I haven't, I've just thumbed through it and I'm just not seeing a section, and I think we should highlight that.
There's a section that speaks to the intention of this serving our community and using the broad set of engagement opportunities that we have now to inform this. There's not as much, there's not a huge amount of detail in here. This is, again, a largely internally focused document in terms of it's giving us guidance. We're open to input, but it's not a specifically externally focused sort of communications device. So we didn't have as much detail in there as perhaps you were looking for. That it might be appropriate in a different venue, but I'd look to Doug to see if he has any response to that, and certainly we could do some more thinking about that.
Yeah, I think this also gets into what we brought to the board last year, we did for the first time, is also tying these consultation processes in with our budget. So, because budget and business plan have to make sure they interface at some point. So we've had open houses in different spots, and I think we need to continue doing that. And I'm not sure of who we actually track, I think at the open houses we tracked who actually who came and participated. I know I went to all of them last year. So I think maybe that's part of what we have to do is actually track that.
Yeah, and I think and my comment is because I've been through a lot of strategic plans, right, for different organizations and different, for my school board, for example, that, I also serve on. All of those documents have at least a page that's devoted to these are the communities that we engaged with. Here are their numbers, right? We administered 700 surveys, for example, via online. This is how we got feedback. So I think my comment and my suggestion is that we include somewhere on this document that says this is our due diligence to getting the feedback that we want to help inform this, because I don't think it does any good to just, again, talk to each other as agencies or executive when we're not actually going out into the community and soliciting the feedback. So, and I believe that we do have a community engagement process that you just outlined with forums and public can provide testimony, but I'm not seeing that reflected in here.
Thank you. Yes, we certainly have those efforts. We are trying to incorporate those kinds of input and make the engagement meaningful, of course. And if you're not seeing that in here, we can try to reflect that a little bit more.
Yeah, I think it's industry best practice to include what is the community engagement results and feedback. So, or at least in the world that I come from.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ellen, thank you very much.
Yeah.
That concludes my overall report. Covered a lot of different topics here today, so
You did.
back to you, Mr. President.
Any other further questions or comments for the general manager? All right, then I'm going to move on to our consent agenda, which anybody watching at home or on their computer would know that the items on the consent agenda are considered routine and may be approved by the board in one blanket motion. However, any board member can remove an item from the consent portion of the agenda for discussion or questions by requesting such prior to the consideration of this portion of the agenda. And I will point out for anybody listening, if they don't have the agenda in front of them, there are two items on the consent agenda. First is the approval of the board meeting minutes for December 11th, 2019, our last meeting, and then a resolution directing that reading of all ordinances be by title only, because we have an ordinance in there. We will not make our general counsel read the entire, 35 pages of that, and they are available online if anybody wants to look at those. So is there anything on the consent agenda a member of the board would like to have removed or has questions? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none then, all in favor of the motion to approve the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the motion is approved and the consent agenda is adopted. All right, let's move on to our resolutions. We have a number of them today. The first resolution is Resolution 20-01. I'm sorry.
I would ask that if there's no objection, to move the resolution 20-01-07 to the top, please. There are constituents and members of my district that are here to hear and discuss that, or not discuss it, but to hear that that particular resolution.
Any objection to moving that forward now? Seeing none, then let's go to Resolution 20-01-07, which is honoring Rosa Parks. Mr. General Manager, do you want to make comments on this resolution?
I do. I'm just getting there for a sec. So again, the intention here is to honor one of America's greatest activists in the civil rights movement, and again, clearly best known for many things, but her pivotal role in the Montgomery bus boycott. Again, we're referring to Rosa Louise Macaulay Parks. Congress has called her the First Lady of Civil Rights and the Mother of the Freedom Movement. The intention today, and I will turn it over to Director Edwards, is he may want to have some comments as well to this. And so I will pass it on to you, Director Edwards, at this time.
Thank you very much. I would like to move to amend the resolution.
And what might that amendment be?
The amendment would be to honor Rosa Parks by having a free ride day, free ride equity day on February 4th of 2021.
21. So what you're saying is, so a year from now, you're suggesting that we would include in this language that would say that on February 1st, 2021, we would.
February 4th.
Oh, excuse me, February 4th, of course. February 4th, that we would enact a free transit day for the entire district.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
And I'd like to comment on that once I get a second.
Okay.
Second.
I have a second. All right.
Thank you very much. The reason I bring this up is simply because we talk about equity, and there's no better way to have equity than for everyone in the community to be able to ride on TriMet that day. Everyone would be able to, because it would be free. Also, it brings attention to Rosa Parks, who I must say is considered the mother of the civil rights movement. She rode a bus, and her riding that bus launched the civil rights movement in this country. I'm sure there will be others that would say that perhaps someone like Cesar Chavez should be honored with this same recognition. And certainly myself, being from having a half a century in the labor movement, honor Cesar Chavez, and I certainly recognize that what he did in the labor community for agricultural workers in this country is unparalleled, but he does not rise to the level of Rosa Parks. Some would say perhaps Martin Luther King should be honored as well. I would again disagree that Martin Luther King is not the mother of the civil rights movement, even though he spearheaded the movement in this country. I also recognized A. Philip Randolph, who is a civil rights icon as well. A. Philip Randolph is often goes unrecognized for the contributions he made in this country to civil rights. However, he still does not rise to the level of Rosa Parks. So those that would say that someone might piggyback on this effort or piggyback on this thought or this movement, I would certainly disagree. A. Philip Randolph fought the fight with the Pullman Company for 12 years, trying to organize the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. He was successful in doing that, but his transportation mode was the train. It was not buses. And so therefore, that's why I recognize that Rosa Parks should be honored in this fashion for one day. And I know that there are budget constraints, but at the same time, there's an opportunity to make sure that the budget will be able to make this happen next year. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So comments, that we have a motion and a second on the table, and we're into discussion of the motion. So yes, Director Gonzalez.
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you for proposing that amendment, Director Edwards. I really appreciate you bringing that forward. I second the idea of the concept, and I was going to ask, why wait till next year? You started talking about it at the end there. But I think it's worth acknowledging that, yeah, this is a powerful statement, and I think it's just worth getting in the public record. Why should we wait till next year? And I don't know if that's a question for Director Edwards, Director Stovall, or someone that knows the money side a little better, but what what is preventing us from doing that this year?
My only reason for offering next year, if I may, my only reason for offering next year is simply so that we can have an opportunity to budget for it. I don't like the idea of doing things that have a huge monetary, well, not necessarily in the scope of our budget, not a huge monetary cost, but still it has a monetary cost to it. And certainly, I would think it's more responsible to have it budgeted.
Anybody else would like to respond to that? Yes.
Thank you, Director Edwards, for bringing up this this great recognition for a civil rights hero. I think it's so important to highlight these stories and to honor women, courageous women in particular, who have gone before us. And I'm just looking again at our business plan that we just talked about earlier, and the values that we have in this business plan: safety, inclusivity, equity, community, and teamwork. I look at those values, and those were the values that Rosa Parks basically carried out in her whole life. And she lived, through conviction, and she stood up for injustice. So I think it is advantageous of us to move forward with this. I do have a question on either the 2020 or the 2021 free day. And what comes to mind when I think about that is, if we're offering free rides for folks who are under the influence on New Year's Eve, for example, or to Blazers games, I think our agency can take a look at this, especially for this year. Those events are, they're also different events that are important to community and maybe to Portlanders, but I think this overshadows and this really triumphs any justification that we can make around offering free fares that day.
So I'm just trying to understand where you are. So you're supportive of the motion as presented to going forward, looking and doing this on February 4th of 2021?
I believe that's the motion that.
It is. Just wanted to make sure I could.
I'm supportive of that.
Okay.
So, needless to say, if you've heard any of my historical rhetoric on this board, I am wholeheartedly supportive of the motion that's on the table. And, I think Director Edwards referenced it in regards to Rosa Parks, her direct correlation to transit, and it's in the evidence that it was the start of the human rights movement, or an incredible catalyst of the civil rights movement. And I think the direct correlation of what we're trying to recognize here continues to bring to the forefront the courageous effort that she made, that historic day that was a domino effect and an impact that allows me and others who look like me to sit on this board, to take positions within organizations that have leadership. We no longer have to sit at the back of the bus. We get to actually, sit at this table and enjoy the opportunity to lend, any type of intelligence and conversations that we have to direct to this in a positive way. So, I wouldn't be sitting here. I don't believe I'd be sitting here if it wasn't for her efforts. And so I believe I am bound by, duty to ensure that doesn't get forgotten. And it's an effort that needs continuous reminders in the busyness of our world today. I think we need to have something that continues to put it to the forefront. And also, a lot of the work that I think has come from that are folks who are disenfranchised, are the folks who are at the lower end of the socioeconomic status ladder. And I think this gives us an opportunity to continue to honor Rosa, but then also to give back to the community in this regard. I think this is there are many things and many people that can be honored in various ways, but absolutely I believe that this honors Rosa Parks in a way that has a direct correlation to that effort, that fateful day that has put into effect, into motion, my opportunity to sit here at this table and help move forward this decision. So I am supportive of 2021 honoring Rosa Parks in this way, a free transit day. I believe that gives us an opportunity to actually communicate it to the community and actually do it in a way that I think is going to be very honoring of this individual, rather than trying to implement something very quickly that I think could be haphazard.
Yes.
I also just want to quickly say I also support this motion. Thank you to Director Edwards for bringing this forward. It's a really good opportunity for us to show that we're living our values of equity and inclusivity. And I agree that this should be taken into account into next year's budget. So I agree it's appropriate to adopt a free fair day in 2021. I think also it would provide the agency some interesting data. What happens if we have free transit for one day? What does that do to ridership and other use of the system? So I'm supportive. Thank you.
Any comments? Okay. All right, so I guess I would say that I'm where Travis is. I think that rather than trying to rush it for this year, and I appreciate your suggested motion because it does give the agency, frankly, an opportunity to really get the word out about this in a really positive way in anticipation of this date that next year. So I'm fine with the motion, and I think unless there's further questions or comments, I'd like to call the question on the motion to add the language, and I'm looking at General Counsel. We got enough there that you can come up with some language? Yes. Okay. All right. That will essentially create a free transit day, Transit Equity Day on February 4th, 2021. I'm going to call the question then. All those in favor of the motion to amend this resolution, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is approved. All right, then back to the main resolution. Is there a motion to approve Resolution 20-01-07 as amended?
So moved.
Have a motion?
Second.
All right, got a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yay.
Yep. Whoop.
Just had a quick quote from Rosa Parks. She said, "I had no idea that history was being made. I was just tired of giving up." And yeah. I believe we're making history today. So
cool.
Just wanted to comment on that.
Dr. Gonzalez, did you have something else to add?
I'm just thrilled.
Okay. All right. All right, then. All those in favor of the motion, did I get a motion in a second? All right, I guess right. Of course I did. All those in favor of the motion to approve Resolution 20-01-07, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is approved unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes. Now I have something to say.
Okay.
And with the vote, I just want to acknowledge congratulations to the partnerships, to the formation of community coalitions that put this together, had a very strong, consistent, clean message. I think this was a fantastic example of what can be done when we're all seeing the same North Star. Thank you.
All right, moving on, and let's go back to Resolution 20-01-01, which is authorizing a contract with Dennis Uniform Manufacturing, LLC, for the purchase of uniform supply services for TriMet Transportation Operations Division. Mr. General Manager.
Great. Thank you much, Mr. Board President, members of the board. I'm just going to call up Leanne Owens and Kevin Yin, I think they're both here, to respond to any technical questions on this. As they come up, to let you know, so TriMet provides a $350 annual uniform allowance to about 2,000 of our 3,200 employees and growing. Dennis Uniform, as you have before you today, has been contracted as being the contracted uniform supplier for the past 7 years. The contract expires in May of this year. When we issued an RFP for the contract last November, 26 firms were notified and 2 stated intent to bid at that time. However, Dennis was the only vendor to submit a formal proposal, despite going out trying to encourage the competitiveness. Our staff, and I really want to compliment Leanne Owens and Kevin Yin on this, because these are complex nuances of colors and shapes and sizes and everything, and having spent time in past lives on uniforms, it's almost hard to please. So big thank you to both of them. But the role by our own staff, acting in the role of a source evaluation committee, reviewed their proposal in depth, and it was found to be very responsive, and the pricing was determined to be fair and reasonable. The maximum amount for the contract will be for $3.63 million over a 7-year period. That includes a 15% buffer for price adjustments, staffing level increases, and such that I referred to a little bit earlier. This is a requirements contract, which means the cost is based on actual purchases. This is something you have to manage tightly. And the contract amount is accounted for under various operating budgets, different styles, shapes, and such as through FY27 in our projections. The dentist uniform, they are a Portland-based organization with about 400 employees, so it's always great when you can go local. 64% identify as minorities and 75% as female. The dentist partners with local women-owned businesses for uniform design, the patterning, but those firms are not certified that they deal with. Our staff will look for dentists as part of this, should this be approved by the board today, to work with the certified firms for the duration of the contract to see if there's other things that we can do here with those subcontractors. In addition, I'll also mention that Dentist Uniform is engaged in a number of climate-focused initiatives with us, including subsidizing public transit for use of its employees, so they are customers, which is always great to do. And you're going to see more and more of that, where we are starting to ask in our procurement process that if we're going to be awarding many, many millions of contract dollars, capital and operating, that we ask our own suppliers to start using the services that they make a great living off of. So you'll see this more and more in the future. Your approval of this resolution is recommended, and I know that Kevin and Leanne, again, big thanks to both of them for immense work to get this far. So, happy to answer any questions.
Did you two have anything you wanted to add before we got this questions maybe from the board?
Nope.
All right.
We're good.
All right, move the questions from the board then on this item. Yes.
I just wanted to quickly say I'm glad we're supporting a local business.
Yeah.
We always make an extra effort to do that outreach for the competitive process to happen. So it just happened to be, this one just happened to work out. So.
Yeah, they're a good firm. They've been here a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So good. Other comments or questions? Seeing none, then is there a motion to approve Resolution 20-01-01?
So moved.
Have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, then all in favor of the motion to approve Resolution 20-01-01, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion is approved unanimously. Thank you very much. Let's move on to Resolution 20-01-02, which is a contract with Enid Innovations in Transportation, Inc. for software maintenance and on-call support.
Great.
Mr. General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Board President, members of the board. Just like to call up A.J. O'Connor, and I think Tim is here as well, Tim McHugh, our CIO. As you indicated, this resolution is authorizing a contract with Enid Innovations for software and on-call support of our bus dispatch system specifically. It's used by TriMet bus dispatchers to monitor and manage all our fixed route buses. It gives the ability to monitor buses in real time, communicate with the operators, provide silent alarm service functionality, as well as arrival time information for our customers. So a pretty core function for the organization. It is mission critical for us. And the board of directors did approve the contract to procure and install the Enid software back in 2009. Mm-hmm. So this is a long-term investment in a software platform for us. They are proprietary to Enid, which is important in terms of the outside marketplace. We cannot receive updates or patches from any other vendor. So again, really gets to the sole source side of things here. And this contract would continue the maintenance and on-call support by Enid, which we significantly rely on. The cost over the 5-year periods is $4.12 million. And it includes cost increases relative to TriMet's anticipated fleet expansion. So it's not the photographs today, it's to be able to manage expansion as well. Without the contract, we would not receive our basic security and operations updates, so you can imagine it not being available. So pretty core function for us. Your approval is recommended here, and the technical team here is very capable to probably answer the questions is way over my head. So if you have any.
Yes. Start here.
Just briefly, I remember, I mean, we've worked with Enid for quite some time for a number of things. Hot Pass implementation, all of that stuff. They've been an incredible vendor for us. I remember specifically as we talked about this back in 2009, one of the things that was a concern of ours as a board was in regards to the proprietary nature of this. At that time, I think we were all comfortable with it, and it had been a great partner along those lines. what have we looked at, and this is going to be a difficult question to kind of answer, but was there any type of cost comparison to alternative systems at this point, and what those costs would have been had we had a more open source system or a system that could be serviced by other organizations? As the agency continues to move forward, we have got variable costs and we got fixed costs. In the short term, that exists. In the long term, everything is variable because things can be changed. So I'm wondering, what's the pricing looking like at this point in comparison to what's also available in the marketplace? Now, the reason I say it's a difficult question is because we'd have cost in regards to switching out to a new system, and so that's why it's so complicated. But
is the question in relation specifically to the on-call maintenance and
Correct.
software? We would have to compare. Well, let me explain how the cost is built. So they have a software maintenance for the various modules that we're using. So although the narrative primarily spoke to bus dispatch, it does include the firmware that's on the hop validator. And you said, don't quote you, but I'm going to quote you, the ding, ding, ding sound you hear. The technical term for that is the Prox Mobile validator. So the firmware on that will be covered under this contract for software and maintenance. So to try and get a comparison, we would have to go to a transit agency that had all the same modules. And there really isn't a transit agency that has the same modules or are necessarily all in it. So trying to do that is pretty daunting, to do that kind of apples to apples comparison.
Correct.
Now, having said that, for the amount of modules and software and 24/7 by 365 on call, the other part of it is it's not just sending us patches and updates. It's we have the ability to call them 24/7, 365 and get response from engineers should we have a failure that we are not able to figure out. So factoring in those two things, it's not dissimilar or wildly out of bounds compared to other IT functions that we have on call and maintenance contracts.
Excellent. That's exactly what I was asking.
Okay, good.
Director Gonzalez, did you have a question?
No, I'm good now. I'm really interested in the fact that we have a sole source contract with a proprietary software means that relationship becomes very important. I just want to make sure it's a two-way relationship. It's not a question, but really a North Star for us. In light of what you just mentioned, Doug, about those vendors that are using our system and incentivizing to be a good partner, I want to make sure that we're leaning on in that way as well. I know that their nearest headquarters are out in Seattle. It'd be good to understand them as far as what their strategic plans are moving forward for their presence in Portland, for how they behave as a company, how they benefit communities. Those sorts of things I think will help us ensure that the partnership is a two-way relationship.
Yeah, you bet. Any other questions or comments? Good comments. All right. Well, then I'm going to, did we have a motion and a second on this? Boy, I'm losing it today. So let's, you agree?
Yeah. Not just today. You opened it up.
I did. There's no question about that. All right, then. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of the motion to approve Resolution 20-01-02, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I did too.
Okay.
Good
Okay,
catch.
see, now here we go.
See,
So,
I don't remember that.
let's try again. Resolution 20-01-02, the contract in it. Is there a motion to approve that resolution?
So moved.
Have a motion? Is there a second? Have a second, okay. Thank goodness, it wasn't just all me. Are we ready to vote? All right. All those in favor of the motion to approve Resolution 20-01-02, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion is approved unanimously. Thank you very much for saving me on that one. I appreciate it. All right. The next one, let's move on to Resolution 20-01-03, which is to appoint members of the 2021 House Bill 2017 Advisory Committee. So is there a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
Have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
All right, I've got that. We have a motion and a second on this
Yeah,
one.
now we can
Staff,
talk
would
about
you
it.
like to tell us a little bit about this?
Yes.
Please.
So I'm just gonna, Bernie, maybe call up yourself, and I don't know if it's, Jamie? Tom. Oh, Tom's coming up. Come on up, Tom. Okay. So while they're coming up, so this is a committee that was first appointed in 2017 for the planning cycle that runs through fiscal year 21. The returning members must be reappointed prior to the start of FY22 and fiscal year 22 and 23's funding cycles, and replacement members must also be appointed. House Bill 2017 required the board to take this action in order for TriMet to receive the House Bill 2017 funding, so it was a precondition. The proposed House Bill Advisory Committee consists of 28 members, if you recall, and represent transit users, seniors, persons with disabilities, youth, employers, low-income, education, environmental, minority communities, as well as service providers across the region, as well as local government. So a real cross section of our community. The members of the TEAC, or Transit Equity Advisory Committee, and were also represented on this committee. For the next cycle, half of those participating members will be new, and half, of course, because the other half is, they'll be returning. You can see on the list that 28 representatives, they're all outlined for you in Exhibit A, attached in your documentation. The staff, as a compliment to them, there's a lot of work that goes into this, made every effort to ensure the committee represents a broad spectrum of interests, perspectives, cultural backgrounds of this, our Tri-County community and district. The resolution before you today has no financial impact, but it's required to establish this group to receive funding under HB 17. Again, this is the advisory committee. Your approval is recommended, and Tom is the expert to answer any technical questions you may have.
Questions for staff on this one? This is a fairly impressive group of folks here you got put together, so thank you for
Well, and I also want to compliment Bernie Bottomley and others for those who are trying to help, particularly on the early construct of this, as well as Tom. This was a lot of hard work, many, many days and hours, and I watched from a distance, and just it's hard to get agreement sometimes, but ultimately the community did.
All right. Well, with that, I know I have a motion and a second.
Yes,
I don't
you
see
do.
any questions, further questions or comments. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of the motion to approve Resolution 20-01-03, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is approved unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, let's go on. We got two items, two resolutions, all dealing with the acquisition of right-of-way, excuse me, I'm sorry. We're going to do the first one, is Resolution 20-01-04, which is authorizing acquisition by purchase or by exercise of the power of eminent domain, certain real property necessary for the construction of the Division Transit Project. Mr. General Manager.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Board President, members of the board. So construction of this project is expected literally to begin next month. And a ceremonial groundbreaking is literally scheduled for tomorrow. We're very pleased to have the FDA head administrator reporting to Elaine Chow will be joining us here in Portland for, I think, the first time, so for that ceremony. So quite an exciting time. So keeping the project on schedule requires a streamlined process and property acquisition is part of that, as this agency and others have gone through this before. The only way to ensure the timely acquisition to meet our critical path to implement this and our commitments is through also use an instrument of, as the board has seen before, eminent domain. The resolution authorizes the condemnation of properties found necessary for the project, and only those. There's about 150 properties on the list, which you can see included as part of this resolution. And it was stated in the presentation of the resolution last August that we do not expect to acquire entire properties. So these are intended to be remnants, frontages, things of that nature. Rather, due to the physical constraints of this corridor, we're looking to acquire property for temporary construction easement, staging properties of that nature, or small acquisitions that allow for the expansion of the needed and critical public right-of-way. We're hopeful, as it has been in past projects, the vast majority of the acquisitions will occur through natural negotiations. The acquisition of the property is a project cost and is included in the Division Transit project numbers overall. I would ask you to note that TriMet, we have a long track record of being successful in acquiring vast majorities of properties through the negotiation process and not necessarily through eminent domain. So we don't use that first, we use that last. It may sound significant or ominous because condemnation is a powerful instrument of government, and we don't take that lightly. For the agency, though, it is a mechanism when you deal with a regional system as we do, crossing all the tri-counties and municipalities. It is something that we need to do to obtain the property in some cases and keep the project on schedule. So this is a very important critical path instrument for us. For property owners involved in this, preserves the right to have a judge or a jury decide, if needed, the appropriate level of compensation if the agency and the property owner cannot come to agreement. So there's a third-party adjudication process, if you will, that comes with this. It also allows the property owner to access funds, and this is important, while the ultimate amount of the just compensation is determined. We went through this as an example on the Columbia bus facility not so long ago. So your approval of the resolution is recommended, and Lance, of course, is here as our legal expert and real estate professional on this. So happy to answer any questions.
Good. Again, as I think, I agree that the title sounds ominous and power of eminent domain, but I want to do right here acknowledge TriMet staff for the hard work they have done in the past projects to make sure that we really do not have to go to court to actually condemn the properties. And the ones that I remember we actually did go to court were usually a friendly condemnation, and it dealt with tax issues, if I remember right, in terms of why people wanted to go through those proceedings. But I would, because this is new for many of the board members, I'll make sure we got questions answered. Director Edwards.
And you may have answered the question. Have we had any eminent domain issues or condemnation issues in the past?
Well, you try to answer.
That's right.
He's asking if there's any condemnation or eminent domain issues in the past. And I think my answer is there's every one of these, as what I see is there's a handful, maybe 3 or 4, where it's actually gone to a condemnation. But in those cases, the ones I remember, they were friendly condemnations. So I think the staff has done a wonderful job of working with property owners to address their concerns, to come up with a compensation that works for us and works for them, that is reasonable and just. And so I've seen great work, but maybe you probably have more numbers or statistics on this one if you want to give us some more.
Yeah, so the Portland-Milwaukee light rail line, I don't remember off the top of my head the exact number of acquisitions. I think it was around 200. We had 1 trial. Occasionally we will have to file with the court to ensure we get possession of the property to meet project schedule, and that's when we deposit the just compensation, our opinion of just compensation, into the court. Property owner can take it out. We continue to negotiate during that entire process, and last project we settled every single one of those except one. We had 1 trial where we just couldn't agree, and a jury decided.
Thank you.
Other questions? Director Gonzalez?
Yeah, just I see the batch of parcels that are delineated for this. Do we anticipate for future batches, or does this constitute what we see for the entire run?
Hopefully, well, it's hard to be absolutely sure. This is our best current knowledge. In August, there are a few parcels that came off from the August resolution, and a few that were added based on project design tweaks.
So I'm hearing we tried to be comprehensive within today's known knowledge. We're not saying we're batching it from 20th to 100th, and then we're going further or something.
No, at some point we had talked about that, and then we decided to bring all of it to you for authority to condemn. If there is a parcel that needs to be condemned that is not on this list, we have to come back for that parcel. If there's a parcel added and the acquisition is through a negotiation and it doesn't exceed the board threshold, then we would not have to come back. But we have to get the board authority to condemn. So if the design changes and a property's added, we will have to come back if we have to condemn that property.
And follow up with the properties that are listed, however, it sounds like with today's vote, we're authorizing any one of those pathways to be activated.
Correct.
Thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, that is there a motion to approve resolution 20-01-04?
So moved.
Have a
Second.
motion. Have motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on this resolution or the motion? Hearing none, then let's call for the question. All those in favor of the motion to approve Resolution 20-01-04, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion is approved unanimously. All right, now we'll move into the last two resolutions now, which are both dealing with the West Side Express service, and the first is Resolution 2001-05, which is authorizing modification of the shared use agreement with Portland and Western Railroad, Inc. for the West Side Express service operations, and it's Amendment 4.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Board President, members of the board. So about 13 years ago, back in 2006, TriMet entered into a 50-year shared use agreement with Portland and Western for the operation and maintenance of WES. The agreement covers our understandings between TriMet and I'll call P&W, Pacific and Western, for annual funding of services. When WES opened in 2009, the shared use agreement was amended to establish their billing rates for 5-year periods, which they be intended to be updated. Each period was signed to an amendment. Amendment 3 expired in February of 2019. Since then, P&W continued billing based on the Amendment 3 rate structure while working on the proposed amendment, basically the negotiations with them. And Amendment 4, which is outlined in the resolution, would be retroactive and apply to February 2019 to February 2020, literally next month. It does use a cost methodology that is expected to reduce TriMet cost the amount of approximately $115,000. Coincidentally or tangentially, that's almost the amount of the Rosa Parks free transit day. Just so you know, there is an intersection here on dollars. So
nicely done.
P&W will issue a credit memo to us should this be approved.
Exactly.
Once the amendment is executed. And under Amendment 4, the financial impact for February is to February 2020 is $2.8 million. The operating services, they're budgeted in our FY20, fiscal year 20 operating budget, and your approval is recommended, and we'll consider the next resolution is Amendment 5 to come, so you'll see that later with the future going forward cost structure. So, Brett, what did I miss?
Nothing. I thought that was perfect, actually.
Jeez.
Suck up.
Playing in the bonus round. He's playing the bonus round.
Any questions for the general manager or staff? Sorry about that. Hearing none, then, is there a motion to approve Resolution 20-01-05?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, then, all those in favor of the motion to approve Resolution 20-01-05, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is approved unanimously. All right, so our last resolution now is Resolution 20-01-06, which is authorizing a modification to the shared use agreement with Portland and Western Railroad, Inc. for West Side Express Service Operation Amendment 5.
Thank you. So, as was stated in the previous amendment, this is a 50-year contract, and this is about Amendment 5 that covers the operations and maintenance between February 2020 and 2024. Puts the use agreement amendment back on its 5-year frequency cycle, and also applies a slight change to the schedules to allow for percentage increase based on overhead structure. Under the agreement, TriMet will only bill at cost for overhead services, and the change results in a more clearly defined overhead number for us to know, and also matches more federal reporting requirements and a more auditable, easy audit for P&W. The use agreements processed through our budgeting process and legal departments, and it's within our fiscal 20 transportation division's operating budget, so it is captured. This financial impact under the proposed Amendment 5 before you is for an estimated $10.6 million over 4 years. And it's to be invoiced to TriMet on a monthly basis for actual service provided. Your approval is recommended. This is an expensive railway agreement. I will say that.
Questions?
That does, Bruce, that does.
Yes.
That does prompt a question. In the public testimony, an individual said, shut down WES. Maybe could you talk about
Sure.
why we aren't doing that?
Well, firstly, as stated before, this is a 50-year no-cut contract that was put in place back in 2006. So our options are essentially zero to really shut West down. And I would think it is an expensive service. The ridership is marginal, it's not achieved where it needs to go. I do believe it's providing an important service for people now. What I would suggest is I think this also gets to the importance of the Southwest Corridor, where you can have a lot higher frequency. And I think we have to continue to optimize the contract that's before us to the degree possible. It is challenged from an effective efficiency perspective, but it's tough to deal with a no-cut contract. I have dealt with them in the past lives, not at this agency and others. It is not, now this is a short line railway relationship, not what's called a class one like a UP, BNSF. It is hard to change a no-cut contract like that, so.
Thank you.
How many people have board members actually ridden on the west line?
The west.
West, this line? I would encourage you to do it sometime to understand what this service is like. I believe it's a service that I think as the area densifies further in Wilsonville, and maybe some additional jobs come back to Wilsonville, that the ridership will go up. And I do know that for years people have talked about extending that line down to Kaiser to provide another commute option for people wanting to go to Salem. And so I don't know whether that'll ever happen, but that's some of the stuff that I think you need to look forward. The purpose of this line, and it may change in the future, but there's no question that right now it's expensive on a per ride for us to support that, and I'm hoping we can change that through growth and maybe a promotion of it. Do you have something you wanted to add or question?
Yes. So ultimately, I can appreciate the fact that we've got this no cancel contract in place. Being a student of finance, we also run up against kind of the whole conversation of if we're not meeting variable costs, then we can lose less by shutting something down. So there's that. I'm not saying that that's the case here, but that's an argument that always has to be looked at and evaluated. I think it would behoove us as an agency, as a board, and as a board to truly understand what it would take to make West more successful. I'm not sure. West was implemented before I joined the board, and so we've got those two options. Reference of shutting it down or leveraging the asset that we have in place. At some point as a board, we've got to also look at leveraging the incredible asset that we have in place, and how do we do that? If closing and shutting down is not an option, the alternative isn't to just sit and watch it continue to degrade, but what are things that we can do to encourage the utilization of that asset that's already in place? And so that's where my mind goes. If the conversation is moot on having the opportunity to shut it down because we actually lose less as we continue running it, what does the future look like, and how do we leverage that incredible asset? So that's where I sit, and that'd be something that I'd love to see as a board member, and also in the Finance and Audit Committee, on what are some things and levers we can pull on to continue to encourage the utilization of that.
Good comments. Other questions? So then, is there a motion to approve Resolution 20-01-06?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this motion or this item? Hearing none then, all those in favor of the motion to approve Resolution 20-01-06, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is approved unanimously. That concludes our resolutions. We're now going to move into Ordinance 357, which is a second reading of the ordinance regarding net earnings from self-employment. And if everybody remembers, we had our first reading at our last meeting. We also had a public hearing. I don't believe anybody showed up to testify, but so we've followed our legal process. And this makes, again, a bookkeeping change, and you'll give us some more about that. So I'm going to turn to TriMet General Counsel Shelley Devine for the first reading of this ordinance.
Second reading, but thank you.
Excuse me.
Ordinance number 350. Ordinance number 357 of the Tri-County Metropolitan Transportation District of Oregon, amending Chapter 14 of the TriMet Code to revise the definition of net earnings from self-employment.
Good. Is there anything you want to tell us about the ordinance here in terms of the difference from where we were last
I
week?
think all of the board members were here, except you, Director Gonzalez, but this was it's just a housekeeping matter. We reconnect to the federal definition each year of net earnings from self-employment. We do it in order to ensure, it's an easy way to administer the tax receipts for our Department of Revenue in Oregon. And it makes it clean and clear for taxpayers that pay self-employment taxes, so.
Well, Keith, you weren't here either. Do you have some questions?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm good. Thank you. Thank you.
All right there. If there's no further discussion, is there a motion to adopt this ordinance?
So,
Oop, a motion and a second? All right. This does require roll call vote, so Ms. Devine, would you like to call the roll?
Thank you, Mr. Board President. I'll start with Director Way,
Aye.
Director Edwards,
Aye.
Director Stovall,
Aye.
Director Warner,
Aye.
Director Simmons,
Aye.
Director Bauman,
Aye.
Director Gonzalez.
aye.
Ordinance 357 passes unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, that's the end of our regular business portion of our meeting. Is there anything from the board? Oh, there we are.
I would just like to thank the board members. I kind of apologize for the last-minute efforts for the resolution and amendment, but I certainly appreciate your consideration and your thoughtfulness in making this happen.
No need to apologize.
As impulse buys go, that was a fantastic one.
There you go. All right, and Mr. General Manager, you know if nothing else needs to come before us? All right, with that, I'm going to adjourn our business meeting. And I think we do have one briefing item, right?
Correct.
See that? So I got him out on time, so we're going to lose one of our board members to the briefing.
We can serve at the board's pleasure. The briefing item was on enhanced transit corridors, but considering the time we're at, we could actually move that to a future.
Oh, you're wonderful.
I'm taking the temperature of the eyes I'm looking at right now. So
Is everybody okay with moving that? All right. And Travis, before you leave, Director Stovall, I want you to know I will not be here for the February meeting, so you're in charge.
If the Chiefs win, I may not be
Oh, you'll be here.
Hey.
Oh, you'll be here.
Don't worry about that.
Thank you, Mr. General
We'll see you
Manager.
there.
Thank you, staff. Yes.
Okay, thank you all.